Hello there. Welcome, everyone. I've not forgotten how to stream, and I don't know what to do with OBS anymore, but welcome, everyone. Hello, hello. I reinstalled and wiped OBS completely for this, so nothing is as it should be, or whatnot, but yes. Thank you for the stretch. Thank you. What is this? Like, how do I close this? Nani? Close. Go away. Go away. Okay. I sound different? Really? Test 1 2 1 2. Moshimash. Hello, hello. Hello, Radish. Hello, Sifi. Hello, Calio. Hello, Minty. Hello, Anata-san. いらっしゃい。フォローありがとうございます。世話になっております。Hello, Mouse. Welcome, welcome. Hello, Sasha. Hello, Banjo. Oh ho ho ho. Rabbit, good morning. You can still like sleep for another hour if you'd like to, or if you just want to hop in, whichever works for you. Is this my morning voice? No, this is 7 p.m. Crystal clear. Let's go. Distance between me and the mic, maybe. Yaruki, welcome. You're shy. 우와. 있어준나요. Hehehehe. So my set of stories have been 100% completely handpicked by Rabbit, AntiRabbit in the chat. I have not had time to read them yet, so this is gonna be my first reading. I'll be like experiencing the stories along with you guys. So, warning in advance for mispronunciation of words. Very, very big words. Yes, mommy rabbit choice. そうだよ. Like I have no zero literary taste, so I'm like, I know Rabbit likes to read and is a gourmet of the various literature. So, I was like, Rabbit, please help. So basically, all the overlays, the stream, the setup, and everything is by Pote. Please check out Potechi, exclamation mark Pote. All the stories are picked by Rabbit, so all I'm doing is providing my voice and trying to not mangle all the words as I read them. Yes. So, Pote desu. My favorite Pote. Yeah, she's been going for like almost 6 hours, holy crap. Do I have a model today? I do. I do have a model today. Wait, this is not, I should not touch OBS for this. Okay, this is different. Ah, 来た. いらっしゃいいらっしゃいごゆっくりどうぞ。お客様入ります。ラストスプーピーストーリー、レッツラゴーレッツラゴー Yes, so this is the one and only Pote herself. Freaking mad lad. Spent all her time making all this. Yes. Wait, is this, I'm just hoping dearly that I don't mess it up, but yes. Hello there. Ah. Yes, I am T-posing. This is how one appears on stream. You T-pose. Yes, welcome everybody. What is behind me? What? No? No? I don't know what you're talking about. There's nothing behind me. There's something behind you. Yes, so all the shoji animation stuff, the streamer bot integration, streamer bot integration, hand holding is also by Pote. Spent like, I don't know, 6 hours on call because I could not, I'm idiot and I can't like set anything up at all. So yes, the TV. Hand holding. Oh my god, yes. Very, very unsafe so, but it is the hand holding indeed. But yes, so I'll be reading a couple stories today. You can settle down, snuggle in, snuggle up. I don't know how scary, how gory they are, if it is. So heads up if you're uncomfortable with that. I'm not quite sure because I was stupid and I didn't read. I didn't read. Welcome, Curry. Welcome. And yes, welcome all the readers. Hello, hello. Without further ado, shall we start our first one? What is the first one? Or spoopy that way? Thank you for the chug. Where's my water? Who took my water? Oh, you're good. A little spooky, but only like a 4 out of 10 gory. Okay. Watcha. I chug. Is like audio, everything okay? Do we have our comfy cricket chorus in the background? Mic not too loud. Yeah, I did like reset everything. I just put audio gate noise stuff on because I forgot to do that. I just did not add a mic source until like an hour ago, but yes. Okay, so the first story we're going to read is The Room in the Tower by E.F. Benson. They're fairly long, fairly long. So, we'll see. A slight buzz on the mic sometimes. I wonder if that's actually my air conditioning. Is it just sometimes? Maybe it's just noise cancellation. Tokoya. The Room in the Tower. It is probable that everybody who is at all a constant dreamer has had at least once experience of an event or sequence of circumstances which have come to mind in sleep being subsequently realized in the material world. But, in my opinion, so far from this being a strange thing, it would be far odder if this fulfillment did not occasionally happen, since our dreams are, as a rule, concerned with people whom we know and places with which we are familiar, such as might very naturally occur in the awake and daylit world. True, these dreams are often broken into by some absurd and fantastic incident, which puts them out of court in regard to their subsequent fulfillment. But on the mere calculation of chances, it does not appear in the least unlikely that a dream imagined by anyone who dreams constantly should occasionally come true. Not long ago, for instance, I experienced such a fulfillment of a dream which seems to me in no way remarkable and to have no kind of physical significance. The manner of it was as follows. A certain friend of mine, living abroad, was friendly enough to write up to me about once in a fortnight. Thus, when 14 days or thereabouts have elapsed since I last heard from him, my mind, probably either consciously or subconsciously, was expecting a letter from him. One night last week, I dreamed that, as I was going upstairs to dress for dinner, I heard, as often as I heard, the sound of a postman's knock on my front door, and diverted my attention downstairs instead. There, among other correspondence, was a letter from him. Thereafter the fantastic entered, where an opening it found inside the ace of diamonds, and scribbled across it in his well-known handwriting. I am sending you this for safe custody. As you know, it is running an unreasonable risk to keep aces in Italy. The next evening, I was just preparing to go upstairs to dress when I heard the postman's knock, and did precisely as I had done in my dream. There, among other letters, was one from my friend. Only it did not contain the ace of diamonds. Had it done so, I should have attached more weight to the matter, which, as it stands, seems to me a perfectly ordinary coincidence. No doubt I consciously or subconsciously expected a letter from him, and this suggested to me my dream. Similarly, the fact that my friend had not written to me for a fortnight suggested to him that he should do so. But occasionally, it is not so easy to find such an explanation, And for the following story, I can find no explanation at all. It came out of the dark, and into the dark, it has gone again. All my life, I have been a habitual dreamer. The nights are few, that is to say, when I do not find on awaking in the morning that some mental experience has been mine, and sometimes all night long, apparently in a series of the most dazzling adventures befall me. Almost without exception, these adventures are pleasant, though often merely trivial. It is of an exception that I am going to speak. It was when I was about 16 that a certain dream first came to me, and this is how it befell. It opened with my being set down at the door of a big red brick house, where I understood I was going to stay. The servant who opened the door told me that tea was being served in the garden, and led me through a low, dark-paneled hall with a large open fireplace onto a cheerful green lawn set with brown flower beds. They were grouped about, at the tea table, a small party of people, but they were all strangers to me except one, who was a schoolfellow called Jack Stone. Clearly the son of the house, and he introduced me to his mother and father and a couple of sisters. I remember, somewhat astonished to find myself here, for the boy in question was scarcely known to me, and I rather disliked what I knew of him. Moreover, he had left school nearly a year before. The afternoon was very hot, and an intolerable oppression reigned. On the far side of the lawn ran a red brick wall with an iron gate in its center, outside which stood a walnut tree. We sat in the shadow of the house opposite a row of long windows, inside which I could see a table with a cloth laid, glimmering with glass and silver. This garden front of the house was very long, and at one end of it stood a tower of 3 stories, which looked to me much older than the rest of the building. Before long, Mrs. Stone, who, like the rest of the party, had sat in absolute silence, said to me, "Jack will show you your room. I have given you the room in the tower." Quite inexplicably, my heart sank at her words. It felt as if I had known that I should have the room in the tower, and that it contained something dreadful and significant. Jack instantly got up, and I understood that I had to follow him. In silence, we passed through the hall and mounted a great oak staircase with many corners, and arrived at a small landing with 2 doors set in. He pushed one of these open for me to enter, and without coming in himself, closed it after me. Then I knew that my conjecture had been right. There was something awful in the room, and with the terror of nightmare growing swiftly and enveloping me, I awoke in a spasm of terror. Now that dream or variations on it occurred to me intermittently for 15 years. Most often it came in exactly this form: the arrival, the tea laid out on the lawn, the deadly silence, succeeded by that one deadly sentence, the mounting with Jack Stone up to the room in the tower where horror dwelt, and it always came to a close in the nightmare of terror at that which was in the room, although I never saw what it was. At other times, I experienced variations on the same theme. Occasionally, for instance, we would be sitting at dinner in the dining room, into the windows of which I had looked on the first night when the dream of this house visited me. But wherever we were, there was the same silence, the same sense of dreadful oppression and foreboding. And the silence I knew would always be broken by Mrs. Stone saying to me, "Jack will show you to your room. I have given you the room in the tower." Upon which, this was invariable, I had to follow him up the oak staircase with many corners and enter the place that I dreaded more and more each time that I visited it in sleep. Or again, I would find myself playing cards still in silence, in a drawing room lit with immense chandeliers that gave me a blinding illumination. What the game was, I have no idea. What I remember, with a sense of miserable anticipation, was that soon Mrs. Stone would get up and say to me, "Jack will show you to your room. I have given you the room in the tower." This drawing room where we played cards was next to the dining room, and as I've said, was always brilliantly illuminated, whereas the rest of the house was full of dusk and shadows. And yet, how often, in spite of these bouquets of light, I have not pored over the cards that were dealt me, scarcely able to, for some reason, to see them. The designs, too, were strange. There were no red suits, but all were black, and among them there were certain cards which were black all over. I hated and dreaded those. As the stream continued to recur, I got to know the greater part of the house. There was a smoking room beyond the drawing room, and at the end of a passage with a green baize door. It was always very dark there, and as often as I went there, I passed somebody whom I could not see in the doorway coming out. Curious developments, too, took place in the characters that peopled the dreams, as might happen to living persons. Mrs. Stone's, for instance, who, when I first saw her, had been black-haired, became gray, and instead of rising briskly, as she had done when she first said, "Jack will show you your room. I have given you the room in the tower," got up very feebly, as if the strength was leaving her limbs. Jack also grew up, and became a rather ill-looking young man, with a brown mustache, while one of the sisters ceased to appear, and I understood she was married. Then it so happened that I was not visited by this dream for 6 months or more, and I began to hope, in such inexplicable dread did I hold it, that it had passed away for good. But one long night after this interval, I again found myself being shown out onto the lawn for tea, and Mrs. Stone was not there, while the others were all dressed in black. At once I guessed the reason, and my heart leapt at the thought that perhaps this time I should not have to sleep in the room in the tower. And though we usually all sat in silence, on this occasion, the sense of relief made me talk and laugh as I had never done. But even then, matters were not altogether comfortable, for no one else spoke, but they all looked secretly at each other. And soon the foolish stream of my talk ran dry, and gradually an apprehension worse than anything I had previously known gained on me as the light slowly faded. Suddenly, a voice which I knew well broke the stillness. The voice of Mrs. Stone, saying, "Jack will show you your room. I have given you the room in the tower." It seemed to have come from near the gate in the red brick wall that bounded the lawn, and looking up, I saw that the grass outside was sown thick with gravestones. A curious grayish light shone from them, and I could read the lettering on the grave nearest me, and it was, "In evil memory of Julia Stone." And as usual, Jack got up, and again I followed him through the hall and up the staircase with many corners. On this occasion it was darker than usual, and when I passed into the room in the tower, I could only see the furniture, the position of which was already familiar to me. Also, there was a dreadful odor of decay in the room, and I woke screaming. The dream, with such variations and developments as I have mentioned, went on at intervals for 15 years. Sometimes I would dream it 2 or 3 nights in succession. Once, as I have said, there was an intermission of 6 months, but taking a reasonable average, I should say that I dreamed it quite as often as once in a month. It has, as is plain, something of nightmares about it, since it always ended in the same appalling terror, which, so far from getting less, seemed to me to gather fresh fear every time that I experienced it. There was, too, a strange and dreadful consistency about it. The characters in it, as I have mentioned, got regularly older. Death and marriage visited this silent family, and I never, in the dream, after Mrs. Stone had died, set eyes on her again. But it was always her voice that told me that the room in the tower was prepared for me. And whether we had tea out on the lawn, or the scene was laid out in one of the rooms overlooking it, I could always see her gravestone standing just outside the iron gate. It was the same, too, with the married daughter. Usually she was not present, but once or twice she returned again, in company with a man, whom I took to be her husband. He, too, like the rest of them, was always silent. But owing to the constant repetition of the dream, I had ceased to attach in my waking hours any significance to it. I never met Jack Stone again during all those years, nor did I ever see a house that resembled this dark house in my dream. And then something happened. I'd been in London in this year, up until the end of July, and during the first week in August went down to stay with a friend in a house he had taken for the summer months. In the Ashdown Forest district of Sussex, I left London early, for John Clinton was to meet me in Forest Row Station, and we were going to spend the day golfing and going to his house in the evening. He had his motor with him, and we set off, about 5 of the afternoon, after a thoroughly delightful day. For the drive, the distance being some 10 miles. As it was still so early that we did not have tea at the clubhouse, we waited till we should get home. As we drove, the weather, which up until then had been, though hot, deliciously fresh, seemed to me to alter in quality, and became very stagnant and oppressive. And I felt that indefinable sense of ominous apprehension that I am accustomed to before thunder. John, however, did not share my views, attributing my loss of lightness to the fact that I had lost both my matches. Events proved, however, that I was right, though I do not think that the thunderstorm that broke that night was the sole cause of my depression. Our way through deep, high-banked lanes, and before we had gone very far, I fell asleep, and was only awakened by the stopping of the motor. And with a sudden thrill, partially out of fear, but chiefly out of curiosity, I found myself staring in the doorway of my house of dream. We went, I half wondering whether or not I was dreaming still, through a low oak-paneled hall, and out into the lawn, where the tea was laid out in the shadow of the house. It was set in flower beds, a red brick wall with a gate in it bounded one side, and out beyond that was in a space of rough grass with a walnut tree. The facade of the house was very long, and at one end stood a 3-story tower, markedly older than the rest. Here, for the moment, all resemblance to the repeated dream ceased. There was no silent and somehow terrible family, but a large assembly of exceedingly cheerful persons, all of whom were known to me. And in spite of the horror with which the dream itself had always filled me, I had felt nothing of it now, to the scene that was reproduced before me, but I felt intense curiosity as to what was going to happen. Tea pursued its cheerful cause, and before long Mrs. Clinton got up. And at that moment I knew what she was going to say. She spoke to me, and what she said was, "Jack will show you your room. I've given you the room in the tower." And that, for half a second, the horror of the dream took hold of me again. But it quickly passed, and again I felt nothing more than the most intense curiosity. It was not very long before it amply satisfied. John turned to me. "Right up at the top of the house," he said. "I think you'll be comfortable. We're absolutely full up. Would you like to go and see it now? By Jove, I believe that you're right, and that we're going to have a thunderstorm. How dark it has become." I got up and followed him. We passed through the hall and up the perfectly familiar staircase. Then he opened the door and I went in, and at that moment sheer unreasoning terror possessed me. I did not know what I feared. I simply feared. Then, like a sudden recollection, when one remembers a name which has long escaped the memory, I knew what I feared. I feared Mrs. Stone, whose grave with the sinister inscription, "In evil memory," I had so often seen in my dream, just beyond the lawn which lay below my window. And then once more the fear passed so completely that I wondered what was there to fear, and I found myself, sober and quiet and sane, in the room in the tower, the name of which I had so often heard in my dream, and the scene of which was so familiar. I looked around it with a certain sense of proprietorship, and found that nothing had been changed from the dreaming nights in which I knew so well. Just to the left of the door was a bed, lengthways along the wall, with the head of it in the angle. In a line with it was the fireplace and a small bookcase. Opposite the door, on the outer wall, was pierced by 2 lattice-paned windows, between which stood the dressing-table, while ranged along the 4th wall was a washing-stand and a big cupboard. My luggage had already been unpacked, for the furniture of dressing and undressing lay orderly on the washstand and the toilet-table, while my dinner clothes were spread out in the coverlet of the bed. And then, with a sudden start of unexplained dismay, I saw that there were 2 rather conspicuous objects, in which I had not seen before in my dreams. One, a life-size oil painting of Mrs. Stone. The other, a black-and-white sketch of Jack Stone, representing him as he had appeared to me only a week before in the last of the series of these repeated dreams, a rather secret and evil-looking man of about 30. His picture hung between the windows, looking straight across the room to the other portrait, which hung at the side of the bed. At that I looked next, and across the room. As I looked, I felt once more the horror of the nightmare seize me. It represented Mrs. Stone as I had seen her last in my dreams, old and withered and white-haired. But in spite of the evident feebleness of a body, a dreadful exuberance and vitality shone through the envelope of flesh, an exuberance wholly malignant, a vitality that foamed and frothed with unimaginable evil. Evil beamed from the narrow, leering eyes. It laughed in the demon-like mouth. The whole face was instinct with some secret and appalling mirth. The hands, clasped together on the knee, seemed shaking with suppressed and nameless glee. Then I saw also that it was signed in the left-hand bottom corner, and wondering who the artist could be, I looked more closely and read the inscription. Julia Stone by Julia Stone. There came a tap at the door, and John Clinton entered. "Got everything you want?" he asked. "Rather more than I want," I said, pointing to the picture. He laughed. "Hard-featured old lady," he said. "By herself, too. Anyhow, she can't have flattered herself much." "But don't you see," said I, "it's scarcely a human face at all. It's the face of some witch, some devil." He looked at it more closely. "Yes, it isn't very pleasant," he said. "Scarcely a bedside manner, eh?" "Yes, I can imagine getting the nightmare if I went to sleep that close by my bed. I'll have it taken down if you like." "I really wish you would," I said. He rang the bell, and with the help of a servant we detached the picture and carried it out onto the landing and put it with its face to the wall. "By Jove, the old lady's awake," said John, mopping his forehead. "I wonder if she had something on her mind." The extraordinary weight of the picture had struck me too. I was about to reply when I caught sight of my own hand. There was blood on it, considerable quantities, covering the whole palm. "I've cut myself somehow," I said. John gave a little startled exclamation. "Why, I have too," he said. Simultaneously, the footman took out his handkerchief and wiped his hand with it. I saw that there was blood also on his handkerchief. John and I went back into the tower room and washed the blood off, but neither his hand nor on mine was there the slightest trace of a scratch or cut. It seemed to me that, having ascertained this, we both, by a sort of tacit consent, did not allude to it again. Something in my case had dimly occurred to me that I did not wish to think about. It was but a conjecture, but I fancied that I knew the same thing that had occurred to him. The heat and oppression of the air, the storm we had experienced was still undischarged, increased very much after dinner, and for some time most of the party, among whom was John Clinton and myself, sat outside on the path bounding the lawn where we had tea. The night was absolutely dark, and no twinkle of star in the moon ray could penetrate the pall of cloud that overset the sky. By degrees our assembly thinned, the women went up to bed, the men dispersed to the smoking room or billiard room, and by 11 o'clock my host and I were the only two left. All evening I thought that he had something on his mind, and as soon as I was alone he spoke. "The man who helped us with the picture had blood on his hand too, did you notice?" he said. "I asked him just now if he had cut himself, and he said, as he supposed he had, but that he could not find no mark of it. Now, where did that blood come from?" By dint of telling myself that I was not going to think about it, I had succeeded in not doing so, and I did not want, especially just at bedtime, to be reminded of it. "I don't know," I said, "and I don't really care, so long as the picture of Mrs. Stone is not on my bed." He got up. "But it's odd," he said. "Ha! Now you see another odd thing." A dog of his, an Irish terrier by breed, had come out of the house as we talked. The door behind us into the hall was open, and a bright oblong light shone across the lawn to the iron gate which led onto the rough grass outside, where the walnut tree stood. I saw the dog had all his hackles up, bristling with rage and fright. His lips were curled back from his teeth, as if he was ready to spring at something. And he was growling to himself. He took not the slightest notice of his master nor me, but stiffly and tensely walked across the gate to the iron gate. There he stood for a moment, looking through the bars and still growling. Then all of a sudden his courage seemed to desert him. He gave one long howl and scuttled back to the house with a curious crouching sort of movement. "Does that half a dozen times a day," said John. "He sees something which he both hates and fears." I walked to the gate and looked over it. Something was moving on the grass outside. And soon, a sound which I could not instantly identify came to my ears. Then I remembered what it was. It was the purring of a cat. I lit a match and saw the purr, a big blue person, walking round and round in a little circle just outside the gate, stepping high and ecstatically, with tail carried aloft like a banner, its eyes bright and shining. Every now and then it put its head down and sniffed at the grass. I laughed. The end of that mystery, I'm afraid, I said. Here's a large cat having Walpurgis night all alone. Yes, that's Darius, said John. He spends half the day and all night there. But that's not the end of the dog mystery, for Toby and he are the best of friends, but the beginning of the cat mystery. What's the cat doing there? And why is Darius pleased while Toby is terror-stricken? At that moment, I remembered a rather horrible detail of my dreams when I saw through the gate, just where the cat was now, the white tombstone with the sinister inscription. But before I could answer, the rain began, and suddenly and heavily, as if a tap had been turned on, and simultaneously the big cat screeched through the bars of the gate and came leaping across the lawn to the house or shelter. There it sat in the doorway, looking out eagerly into the dark. It spat and struck out at John with his paw, as he pushed it in order to close the door. Somehow, with the portrait of Julia Stone in the passage outside, the room in the tower had absolutely no alarm for me, and as I went into bed, feeling very sleepy and heavy, I had nothing more than interest for the curious incident about our bleeding hands, and the conduct of the cat and dog. The last thing I looked at before I put out my light was a square empty space of the bed where the portrait had been. Here the paper was of its original and full tint of dark red. Over the rest of the walls it had faded. Then I blew out my candle and instantly fell asleep. My awaking was equally instantaneous, and as I sat bolt upright in the bed under the impression that some bright light had been flashed in my face, though it was now absolutely pitch dark, I knew exactly where I was, in the room which I had dreaded in the dreams, but no horror that I ever had felt when asleep approached in the fear that now invaded and froze my brain. Immediately after, a peal of thunder cackled just above the house, but the probability that it was only a flash of lightning which woke me gave no reassurance to my galloping heart. Something I knew was in the room with me, and instinctively I put out my right hand, which was nearest the wall, to keep it away. And my hand touched the edge of a picture frame hanging close to me. I sprang out of bed, setting the small table that stood by it, and heard my watch, candle, and matches clatter to the floor. But for the moment there was no need of light, for a blinding flash leapt out of the clouds, and showed me that my bed against hung the picture of Mrs. Stone. And instantly the room went into blackness again. But in that flash I saw another thing also, namely, a figure that leaned over the edge of my bed, watching me. It was dressed in some close-clinging white garment, spotted and stained with mold, and the face was that of the portrait. Overhead the thunder crackled and roared, and when it ceased and the deathly stillness succeeded, I heard the rustle of movement coming nearer me, and more horrible yet perceived odor of corruption and decay. And then a hand was laid on the side of my neck, and close behind my ear I heard a quick, taken, eager breathing. Yet I knew that this thing, although it could be perceived by touch, by smell, by eye, and by ear, was still not of this earth, but something that had passed out of the body and had the power to make itself manifest. Then a voice, already familiar to me, spoke. "I knew you would come into the tower. To the room in the tower," it said. "I have been long waiting for you. At last you have come. Tonight I shall feast. Before long we will feast together." And the quick breathing came close to me, and I could feel it on my neck. At that the terror, which I think had paralyzed me for the moment, gave way to the wild instinct of self-preservation. I hit wildly with both arms, kicking out at the same moment, and heard a little animal squeal, and something soft drop with a thud beside me. I took a couple of steps forward, nearly tripping over what was it that laid there, and by the merest good luck found the handle of the door. In another second I ran down on the landing, and had banged the door behind me. Almost at the same moment I heard a door open somewhere below, and John Clinton, candle in hand, came running upstairs. "What is it?" he said. "I sleep just below you, and I heard a noise, as if— Good heavens, there's blood on your shoulder." I stood there, so he told me afterwards, swaying from side to side, white as a sheet, with the mark on my shoulder as if a hand covered with blood had been laid there. "It's in there," I said, pouting, pointing. "She, too. She, you know. The portrait is in there, too, hanging up on the place we took it from." At that he laughed. "My dear fellow, this is mere nightmare," he said. He pushed by me and opened the door, I standing there simply inert with terror, unable to stop him, unable to move. "Oh, what an awful smell," he said. Then there was silence. He had passed out of my sight behind the open door. Next moment he came out again, as white as myself, and instantly shut it. "Yes, the portrait's there," he said. "And on the floor is a thing spotted with earth, like what they bury people in. Come away, quick, come away." How I got downstairs I hardly knew. An awful shuddering and nausea of the spirit rather than that of flesh had seized me, and more than once he had to place my feet upon the steps, while every now and then he cast glances of terror and apprehension up the stairs. But in time we came to his dressing room on the floor below, and there I told him what I have here described. The sequel can be made short, indeed. Some of my readers have perhaps already guessed what it was, if they remember that inexplicable affair of the churchyard at West Folly, some 8 years ago, where an attempt was made 3 times to bury the body of a certain woman who had committed suicide. On each occasion, the coffin was found in the course of a few days again, protruding from the ground. After the 3rd attempt, in order that the thing should not be talked about, the body was buried elsewhere in consecrated ground. Where it was buried was just outside the iron gate of the garden belonging to the house where this woman had lived. She committed suicide at the room at the tower in that house. Her name was Julia Stone. Subsequently, the body was again secretly dug up, and the coffin was found to be full of blood. The end. That was The Room in the Tower by E.F. Benson. You can sleep now. Sleep well. Pachi arigato. Alien, welcome. Hello. Welcome. Wait, I did not know what to expect. Not gonna sleep, have coffee in a moment. Yeah, breakfast. Wait, what happened to the friend that he was that was writing him letters? Is there a sequel to this? Rata, welcome. Thank you. I try. For some reason, I have pins and needles. Ready to be summoned by the Raminamakan. Ready? I'm gonna have the rabbit. A. Okay, I'm gonna go into the next room. I'm going to blow out the candles, and we'll see if there are any lingering spirits. Candle. Let's welcome. Oh, that was our first story. Hope you enjoyed it. Shall we summon the rabbit? For now. Actually, I'm mildly curious if my gacha is working. Mm-hmm. Wait, okay, am I stupid? Did I need to add? Hello? Oh, there we go. There we go! It's you! Danish, welcome! Can we hear Rabbit? Testo. Wait, I think from the other side. We can't hear. I know. Okay. They can't hear you yet because I'm Egypt. ちょっと待って. Wait, please. The spirits are patient. Yes. A bit ghost. How does this work? Oh. Hello, Table-kun. No worries. Need, welcome. Can we hear Rabbit now? No Rabbit. Okay. So the spookies are interfering with my my OBS. Yes. Is not pleased. Let me sure. What can I do? Oh no, not the Ouija board. Okay. Dim dim dim. With this ball. How's that?
Spooky.
Ouija board.
It's me.
Can we hear?
Ghost of Rabbit's Past.
Ghost of Rabbit's Past.
DJ Rabbit has passed into the spirit world.
Oh no. And you've entered into a very traditional Japanese room. We here, let's go!
Yeah.
Too loud, too quiet, let me know.
It's me.
Alright, I want to make you a little bit more transparent. But yeah.
So you have read from the Rabbinomicon and
yes,
have summoned me.
I have. This is what happens. Wait, no, then everybody's gonna want to read from the Rabbinomicon because everybody wants to summon the rabbit.
This is true. Well, I'm here for now. I can't stay for very long because my corporeal form
lasts not in this realm.
Yeah, and I have a job on the other side, so
I see. Hardworking ghost rabbit, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that's why I'm so tired.
I see from your face.
Yeah, I get that a lot. It's cool.
Which story from the Rabbinomicon would you like to read for us today?
I think I'll do the Nameless City first, if that's okay.
Of course. Yeah.
And then if you wanted to do one, and then I'll do the other one.
Okay. Are you alright time-wise?
Okay.
Took about 40 minutes, the first one.
Yeah. This one is a little bit... I don't know how long this one is compared to the other one, but I'm good on time. I have, 3 hours.
Gotcha. Okay.
2 hours. Okay, hold on. Let me get Table-kun all settled real quick.
Ready when you are. Yeah. Should we have Rabbit coming out of the sake bowl?
Yeah.
You haunt the alcohol.
It's not it's not wrong. Okay. Okay, I'm going to disable that. All right. So this is The Nameless City by H.P. Lovecraft. When I drew nigh the nameless city, I knew it was accursed. I was traveling in a parched and terrible valley under the moon, and afar I saw it protruding uncannily above the sands as parts of a corpse may protrude from an ill-made grave. Fear spoke from the age-worn stones of this hoary survivor of the deluge, this great-grandmother of the eldest pyramid, and a viewless aura repelled me and bade me retreat from antique and sinister secrets that no man should see, and no man else has dared to see. Remote in the desert of Araby lies the nameless city, crumbling and inarticulate, its low walls nearly hidden by the sands of uncounted ages. It must have been thus before the first stone and while the bricks of Babylon were yet unbaked. There is no legend so old as to give it a name, to recall that it was ever alive, but it is told of in whispers around campfires and muttered about by grandmas in tents of sheiks, so that all the tribes shun it without wholly knowing why. It was of this place that Abdul al-Zared, the bad poet, who wrote the Necronomicon, by the way, spoilers, the mad poet dreamed on the night before he sang his unexplained couplet. That is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange aeons, even before death may die. I should have known that the Arabs had good reason for shunning the nameless city. The city, told of in strange tales but seen by no living man, yet I defied them and went into the untrodden waste with my camel. I alone have seen it, and that is why no other face bears such hideous lines of fear as horridly when the night wind rattles the windows. When I came upon it in the ghastly stillness of unending sleep, it looked at me, chilly from the rays of a cold moon amidst the desert's heat, and I returned its look. And as I returned its look, I forgot my triumph at finding it, and stopped still with my camel to wait for the dawn. For hours I waited, till the east grew gray and the stars faded, and the gray turned to roseal light, edged with gold. I heard a moaning and saw a storm of sand stirring among the antique stones through the sky, though the sky was clear and the vast reaches of desert still. Suddenly above the desert's far rim came the blazing edge of the sun, seen through the tiny sandstorm which was passing away. And in my fevered state, I fancied that from some remote depth there came a crash of musical metal to hail on hails it from the banks of the Nile. My ears rang and my imagination seethed as I led my camel slowly across the sand to that unvocal stone place. That place too old for Egypt and Meroe to remember. That place which I alone of living men had seen. In and out amongst the shapeless foundations of houses and palaces I wandered, finding never a carving or inscription to tell of these men they were, who built the city and dwelt therein so long ago. The antiquity of the spot was unwholesome, and I longed to encounter some sign or device that proved that this city was indeed fashioned by mankind. There were certain proportions and dimensions in the ruins which I did not like. I had with me many tools and dug much within the walls of the obliterated edifices, but progress was slow and nothing significant was revealed. When night and the moon returned, I felt a chill wind which brought new fear, so that I did not dare to remain in the city. And as I went outside the antique walls to sleep, a small, sighing sandstorm gathered behind me, blowing over the gray stones, though the moon was bright and most of the desert still. I awaked just at dawn from a pageant of horrible dreams, my ears ringing as from some metallic peal. I saw the sun peering redly through the last gusts of the little sandstorm that hovered over the nameless city and marked the quietness of the rest of the landscape. Once more I ventured within those brooding ruins that swelled beneath the sand like an ogre under a coverlet, and again dug vainly for the relics of the forgotten race. At noon I rested, and in the afternoon I spent much time tracing the walls and the bygone streets and the outlines of the nearly vanished buildings. I saw that the city had been mighty indeed, and wondered at the source of its greatness. To myself, I pictured all the splendors of an age so distant that Chaldea could not recall it, and thought of Sarnath the doomed that stood in the land of Nar when mankind was young. That was the carven of gray stone before mankind existed. All at once I came upon a place where the bedrock rose stark through the sand and formed a low cliff. And here I saw with joy what seemed to promise further traces of the antediluvian people. Hewn rudely from the face of the cliff were the unmistakable facades of several small, squat rock houses or temples, whose interiors might preserve some secret of ages too remote for calculation, though sandstorms had long since faced any carvings may be seen outside. Very low and sand choked were all the dark apertures near me, but I cleared one with my spade and crawled through it, carrying a torch to reveal whatever mysteries it might hold. When I was inside, I saw the cavern was indeed a temple, and beheld plain signs of the race that had lived and worshipped before the desert was a desert. Primitive altars, pillars, and niches, all curiously low, were not absent, and though I saw no sculptures nor frescoes, there were many singular stones clearly shaped into symbols by artificial means. The lowness of the chiseled chamber was very strange, for I could hardly more than kneel upright. But the area was so great that my torch showed only a part at time. I shuddered oddly in some of the far corners, for certain altars and stones suggested forgotten rites of terrible, revolting, and inexplicable nature, and made me wonder what manner of men could have made and frequented such a temple. When I had seen all that place contained, I crawled out again, avid to find what the other temples might yield. Night had now approached, yet the tangible things I had seen made curiosity stronger than fear, so that I did not flee from the long moon cast shadows that had daunted me when I first saw the nameless city. In the twilight, I cleared another aperture. With a new torch, crawled into it, finding more vague stones and symbols, though nothing more definite than the other temple had contained. The room was just as low, but much less broad, ending in a very narrow passage crowded with obscure and cryptical shrines. About these shrines I was prying when the noise of a wind and of my camel outside broke through the stillness and drew me forth to see what could frighten the beast. The moon was gleaming vividly over the primeval ruins, lighting a dense cloud of sand that seemed blown by a strong but decreasing wind from some point along the cliff ahead of me. I knew it was this chilly, sandy wind which had disturbed the camel and was about to lead him to a better place of shelter, when I chanced a glance up and saw that there was no wind atop the cliff. This astonished me and made me fearful again, but I immediately recalled the sudden local winds I had seen and heard before at sunrise and sunset and judged it was a normal thing. I decided that it came from some rock fissure leading to a cave and watched the troubled sand trace it to its source, soon perceiving that it came from the black orifice of a temple a long distance south of me, almost out of sight. Against the choking sand cloud, I plodded toward this temple, as I neared it, grew larger than the rest and showed a doorway far less clogged with caked sand. I would have entered had not the terrific force of the icy wind almost quenched my torch. It poured madly out at the dark door, sighing uncannily as it ruffled the sand and spread about the weird ruins. Soon it grew fainter and grew more and more still, till finally all was at rest again. But a presence seemed stalking among the spectral stones of the city, and when I glanced at the moon, it seemed to quiver as though mirrored in unquiet waters. I was more afraid than I could explain, but not enough to dull my thirst for wonder. So soon, so as soon as the wind was quite gone, I crossed into the dark chamber from whence it came. This temple, as I had fancied from the outside, was larger than either of those I had visited before, and was presumably a natural cavern, since it bore winds from some region beyond. Here I could stand quite upright, but saw the stones and altars were as low as those in the other temples. On the walls and roof I beheld for the first time some traces of the pictorial art of the ancient race, curious, curling streaks of paint that had almost faded and crumbled away. And on two of the altars, I saw with a rising excitement a maze of well fashioned, curvilinear carvings. As I held my torch aloft, it seemed to me that the shape of the roof was too regular to be natural, and I wondered what the prehistoric cutters of stone had first worked upon. Their engineering skill must have been vast. Then a brighter flare of the fantastic flame showed me that for which I had been seeking, the opening to those remoter abysses whence the sudden wind had blown, and I grew faint when I saw that it was a small and plainly artificial door chiseled in the solid rock. I thrust my torch within, beholding a black tunnel with a roof arching low over the rough flint of very small, numerous, and steeply descending steps. I shall always see those steps in my dreams, for I came to learn what they meant. At the time, I had hardly knew whether to call them steps or mere footholds in a precipitous descent. My mind was whirling with mad thoughts, and the words and warnings of Arab prophets seemed to float across the desert from the lands that men know to the nameless city that men dare not know. Yet I hesitated only a moment before advancing through the portal and commencing to climb cautiously down the steep passage, feet first, as though on a ladder. It is only in the terrible phantasms of drugs or delirium that any other man could have had such a descent as mine. The narrow passage led infinitely down like some hideous haunted well, and the torch I held above my head could not light the unknown depths towards which I was crawling. I lost track of the hours and forgot to consult my watch, though I was frightened when I thought of the distance I must be traversing. There were changes of direction and of steepness, and once I came to a long, low, level passage where I had to wriggle my feet first along the rocky floor, holding my torch at arm's length beyond my head. The place was not high enough for kneeling. After that were more of these steep steps, and I was scrambling down intermittently when my failing torch had died out. I do not think I noticed it at the time, for when I did notice it, I was still holding it high above me as if it were ablaze. I was quite unbalanced with that instinct for the strange and the unknown which had made me a wanderer upon earth and haunter of far, ancient and forbidden places. In the darkness there flashed before my mind fragments of my cherished treasury of daemonic lore. Sentences from Al-Hared's The Mad Arab, paragraphs from the apocryphal nightmares of Damascus, and infamous lines from the delirious image de monde of Gauthur de Metz. I repeated queer extracts and muttered of Afrasiab and of the daemons that floated with him down the Oxus, later chanting over and over again the phrase from one of the Lord Dunsany's tales, the unreverberated blackness of the abyss. Once, when the descent grew amazingly steep, I recited something in sing-song from Thomas More until I feared to recite more. A reservoir of blackness, black as witches' cauldrons are when filled, with moon drugs in the eclipse distilled. Learning to look if foot might pass down through that chasm I saw beneath, as far as vision could explore the jetty sides as smooth as glass, looking as if just vanished, or with that dark pitch the sea of death throws out upon its slimy shore. Time had quite ceased to exist when my feet again felt a level floor, and I found myself in a place slightly higher than the rooms within the two smaller temples, now so incalculably far above my head. I could not quite stand, but could kneel upright, and in the dark I shuffled and crept hither and thither at random. I soon knew that I was in a narrow passage whose walls were lined with cases of wood having glass fronts. As in the Paleozoic and abysmal place, I felt of such things as polished wood and glass. I shuddered at the possible implications. The cases were apparently ranged along each side of the passage at regular intervals, and were oblong and horizontal, hideously like coffins in shape and size. When I tried to move 2 or 3 for further examination, I found they were firmly fastened. I saw that the passage was a long one, so floundered ahead rapidly in a creeping run that I would have seemed horrible to had any eye watched me in the blackness, crossing from side to side, occasionally to feel of my surroundings, and be sure the walls and rows of cases still stretched on. Man is so used to thinking visually that I almost forgot the darkness, low-studded monotony as though I saw it. And then, in a moment of indescribable emotion, I did see it. Just when my fancy emerged into real sight, I cannot tell. But there came a gradual glow ahead, and all at once I knew that I saw the dim outlines of the corridor and the cases, revealed by some unknown subterranean phosphorescence. For a little while, all was exactly as I had imagined, since the glow was very faint. But as I mechanically kept on stumbling ahead into the stronger light, I realized that my fancy had been but feeble. This hall was no relic of crudity like the temples in the city above it, but a monument of the most magnificent and exotic art. Rich, vivid, and daringly fantastic designs and pictures formed a continuous scheme of mural paintings whose lines and colors were beyond description. The cases were of a strange golden wood with fronts of exquisite glass and contained the mummified forms of creatures outreaching in grotesqueness the most chaotic dreams of man. To convey any idea of these monstrosities is impossible. They were of the reptile kind, with body lines suggesting something, sometimes the crocodile, sometimes the seal, but more often nothing of which either the naturalist or the paleontologist ever had heard. In size, they approximated a small man, and their forelegs bore delicate and evidently flexible feet curiously like human hands and fingers. But the strangest of all were their heads, which presented a contour violating all known biological principles. To nothing can such things be well compared. In one flash, I thought of comparisons as varied as the cat, the bulldog, the mythic satyr, and the human being. Not Jove himself had so colossal and protuberant a forehead. Yet the horns and noselessness, an alligator-like jaw placed the things outside of all established categories. I debated for a time on the reality of the mummies, half suspecting that they were artificial idols, but soon decided that they were indeed some Paleologian species which had lived in the nameless city was alive. To crown their grotesqueness, most of them were gorgeously enrobed in the costliest of fabrics and lavishly laden with ornaments of gold, jewels, and unknown shining metals. The importance of these crawling creatures must have been vast, for they held first place among the wild designs on the frescoed walls and ceilings. With matchless skill had the artists drawn them in the world of their own, wherein they had cities and gardens fashioned to suit their dimensions, and I could not but think that their pictured history was allegorical, perhaps showing the progress of the race that worshipped them. These creatures, I said to myself, were to the men of the nameless city what the she-wolf was to Rome, or some totem beast is to a tribe of Indians. Holding this view, I thought I could trace roughly a wonderful epic of the nameless city, the tale of a mighty seacoast metropolis that ruled the world before Africa rose out of the waves, and of its struggles as the sea shrank away and the desert crept into the fertile valley that had held it. I saw its wars and triumphs, its troubles and defeats, and afterward its terrible fight against the desert when thousands of its people, here represented in allegory by the grotesque reptiles, were driven to chisel away their way down through the rocks in some marvelous manner to another world whereof their prophets had told them. It was all vividly weird and realistic, and its connection with the awesome descent I had made was unmistakable. I even recognized the passages. As I crept along the corridor towards the brighter light, I saw later stages of the painted epic, the leave-taking of the race that had dwelt in the nameless city and the valley around for 10 million years, the race whose souls shrank from quitting scenes their bodies had known so long, where they had settled as nomads in the earth's youth, hewing in the virgin rock those primal shrines at which they never ceased to worship. Now that the light was better, I studied the pictures more closely, and remembering that the strange reptiles must represent their unknown men, pondered upon the customs of the nameless city. Many things were peculiar and inexplicable. The civilization, which included a written alphabet, had seemingly risen to a higher order than those immeasurably later civilizations of Egypt and Chaldea. Yet there were curious omissions. I could, for example, find no pictures to represent deaths or funeral customs, save such as those as were related to wars, violence, and plagues. I wondered at the reticence shown concerning natural death. It's as though the ideal of earthly immortality had been fostered as a cheering illusion. Still nearer the end of the passage were painted scenes of the utmost picturesqueness and extravagance, contrasted views of the nameless city and its desertion and growing ruin, and of the strange new realm or paradise to which the race had hewn its way through the stone. In these views, the city and the desert valley were shown always by moonlight, a golden nimbus hovering over the fallen walls and half revealing the splendid perfection of former times, shown spectrally and elusively by the artist. The paradisal scenes were almost too extravagant to be believed, portraying a hidden world of eternal days filled with glorious cities and eternal hills and valleys. At the very last, I thought I saw signs of an artistic anticlimax. The paintings were less skillful and much more bizarre than even the wildest of early scenes. They seemed to record a slow decadence of the ancient stock. coupled with a growing ferocity towards the outside world, from which it was driven by the desert. The forms of the people, always represented by the sacred reptiles, appeared to be gradually wasting away, as though their spirits, as shown hovering about the ruins by moonlight, gained in proportion. Emaciated priests, displayed as reptiles in ornate robes, cursed the upper air and all who had breathed it. And one terrible final scene showed a primitive looking man, perhaps a pioneer of an ancient Irem, the city of pillars, torn to pieces by members of the elder race. I remembered how the Arabs fear the nameless city, that beyond this place the gray walls and ceilings were bare. As I viewed the pageant of mural history, I had approached very closely to the end of the low-ceiling hall, and was aware of a great gate through which came all of the illuminating phosphorescence. Creeping up to it, I cried aloud in transcendent amazement at what lay beyond, for instead of other and brighter chambers, there was only the illimitable void of uniform radiance, such as one might fancy when gazing down from the peak of Mount Everest upon the sea of sunlit mist. Behind me was a passage so cramped that I could not stand upright in it. Before me was an infinity of subterranean effulgence. Reaching down from the passage into the abyss was the head of a steep flight of steps, numerous steps like those of the black passages I had traversed, but after a few feet, glowing vapors concealed everything. Swung back against the left-handed wall of the passage was a massive door of brass, incredibly thick and decorated with fantastic bas-reliefs, which could, if closed shut, the whole inner whirl of light away from the vaults and passages of rock. I looked at the steps, and for the nonce dared not try them. I touched the open brass door and could not move it. Then I sank prone to the stone floor, my mind aflame with prodigious reflections which not even a death-like exhaustion could banish. As I lay still with closed eyes, free to ponder, many things I had lightly noted in the frescoes came back to me with new and terrible significance. Scenes representing the nameless city in its heyday, the vegetation of the valley around it, and the distant lands with which its merchants traded. The allegory of the crawling creatures puzzled me by its universal prominence, and I wondered that it should be so closely followed in a pictured history of such importance. In the frescoes, the nameless city had been shown in proportions fitted to the reptiles. I wondered what its real proportions and magnificence had been, and reflected a moment on certain oddities I had noticed in the ruins. I thought curiously of the lowness of the primal temples and of the underground corridor, which were doubtless hewn thus out of the deference to the reptile deities they are honored, though it perforce reduced the worshippers to crawling. Perhaps the very rites had involved the crawling in imitation of the creatures. No religious theory, however, could easily explain why the level passages in that awesome descent should be as low as the temples, or lower, since one could not even kneel in it. As I thought of the crawling creatures, those hideous mummified forms were so close to me. I felt a new throb of fear. Mental associations are curious, and I shrank from the idea that except for the poor primitive man torn to pieces in the last painting, mine was the only human form amidst the many relics and symbols of primordial life. But as always in my strange and roving existence, wonder soon drove out fear. The luminous abyss, and what it might contain, presented a problem worthy of the greatest explorer. That a weird world of mystery lay far down that flight of peculiarly small steps I could not doubt, and I hoped to find that there those human memorials which the painted corridor had failed to give me. The frescoed had pictured unbelievable cities, hills, and valleys to this lower realm, and my fancy dwelt on the rich and colossal ruins that awaited me. My fears indeed concerned the past rather than the future. Not even the physical horror of my position in that cramped corridor of dead reptiles and antediluvian frescoes, miles below the world I knew and faced by another world of eerie light and mist, could match the lethal dread I felt at the abysmal antiquity of the scene and its soul. An ancientness so vast that measurement as feeble seemed to leer down from the primordial stones and rock-hewn temples in the nameless city, while the very latest of the astounding maps in the frescoes showed oceans and continents that man had forgotten, with only here and there some vaguely familiar outline. of what could have happened in the geological aeons since the painting ceased and the death-hating race resentfully succumbed to decay, no man might say. Life had once teemed in these caverns and in luminous realm beyond. Now I was alone with vivid relics, and I trembled to think of the countless ages through which these relics had kept silent and deserted vigil. Suddenly there came another burst of that acute fear which had intermittently seized me ever since I saw the terrible valley and the nameless city under a cold moon, and despite my exhaustion, I found myself starting frantically to a sitting posture, and gazing back along the black corridor towards the tunnels that rose to the outer world. My sensations were much like those which had made me shun the nameless city at night, and were as inexplicable as they were poignant. In another moment, however, I received a still greater shock in the form of a definite sound, the first which had broken the utter silence of these tomb-like depths. It was a deep, low moaning, as of a distant throng of condemned spirits, and came from the direction in which I was staring. Its volume grew rapidly, till soon it reverberated frightfully through the low passage, and at the same time I became conscious of an increasing draught of cold air, likewise flowing from the tunnels of the city above. The touch of this air seemed to restore my balance, for I instantly recalled the sudden gusts which had risen about the mouth of the abyss each sunset and sunrise, one of which had indeed served to reveal the hidden tunnels to me. I looked at my watch and saw the sunrise was near, so I braced myself to resist the gale which was sweeping down to its cavern home as it had swept forth that evening. My fear again waned low, since a natural phenomenon tends to dispel broodings over the unknown. More and more madly poured the shrieking, moaning night wind into that gulf of the inner earth. I dropped prone again, clutched vainly at the floor for fear of being swept bodily through the open gate and into the phosphorescent abyss. Such fury I had not expected, and I grew aware of an actual slipping of my form towards the abyss. I was beset by 1,000 new terrors of apprehension and imagination. The malignancy of the blast awakened incredible fancies. Once more I compared myself shudderingly to the other human image in the frightful corridor, the man who was torn to pieces by the nameless race. For in the fiendish clawing of the swirling currents there seemed to abide a vindictive rage, all the stronger because it was largely impotent. I think I screamed frantically near the last. I was almost mad, but if I did so, my cries were lost in the hell-born babble of the howling wind wraiths. I tried to crawl against the murderous invisible torrent, but I could not even hold my own as I was pushed slowly and inexorably towards the unknown world. Finally, reason must have wholly snapped, for I fell to babbling over and over that unexplainable couplet of the mad Alharazed, who dreamed of the nameless city. That is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange aeons even death may die. Only the grim brooding desert gods know what really took place, what indescribable struggles and scrambles in the dark I endured, or what Abaddon guided me back to life, or I must always remember and shiver in that night wind till oblivion, or worse, claims me. Monstrous, unnatural, colossal was the thing, too far beyond all ideas of man to be believed except in the silent damnable hours when one cannot sleep. I have said that the fury of the rushing blast was infernal, cacodemoniacal, and that is, its voices were hideous with the pent-up viciousness of desolate eternities. Presently, those voices, while still chaotic before me, seemed to my beating brain to take articulate form behind me, and down there, in the grave of unnumbered aeon-dead antiquities, leagues below the dawn-lit world of men, I heard the ghastly cursing and snarling of strange-tongued fiends. Turning, I saw outlined against the luminous aether of the abyss what could not be seen against the dusk of the corridor, a nightmare horde of rushing devils, hate-distorted, grotesquely panoplied, half-transparent, devils of a race no man might mistake, the crawling reptiles of the nameless city. And as the wind died away, I was plunged into the ghoul-peopled blackness of earth's bowels, for behind the last of the creatures, the great brazen door clanged shut with a deafening peal of metallic music, whose reverberations swelled out to the distant world to hail the rising sun as Memnon hails it from the banks of the Nile. The end. Yeah.
Wait, so he was like sucked into the abyss in the end?
Yeah. He was thrown into the abyss.
Isekai to another world.
Yeah. Of creepy reptile people.
Nice.
I think that's one of my favorite H.P. Lovecraft stories. I also saw that like chat was going. And I was trying not to read it. Thank you for being patient. I know that one was long.
I don't really read chat either when I'm reading it because I don't want to like get in the way of the story. So, yeah. Sage, thank you for the 5 months. The 5 months. Yo, still at welcome. Welcome.
Yeah.
Clap arigato.
I thank everybody on behalf of June's chat. Make sure you give subs.
No.
And bits.
Shh.
And
wait, no, I have the
things.
ability to mute you, so
You do? Yeah. Oh yeah, let me get some coffee.
Okay.
Do you want to read one?
Sure. I'll find a shortish one.
The history of the Necronomicon is super short, or if you wanted to read one of the ones that I wrote, you can.
Yes, I might do that. It was stories for this, y'all. I'm very excited to read. I'll go with which one's short?
You should read. I think Set Me Free is shorter, but Butterfly is better.
Okay, I should read.
Yeah,
I should read The Butterfly, written by the AntiRabbit.
I'm going to go cringe into a corner now.
No. As Rabbit is a writer, he's also open for commissions. If you need assistance with lore, or anything text related, please hit him up. Slide into his DMs. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
He usually has better expressions.
No, this is an accurate representation of how I look in my day-to-day life.
It's RL docs.
Yeah, this is my actual. This is how I look in the morning. All right, but I'm gonna pop on mute for a while, and I'll hang in chat and spookily haunt as you read my story.
Okay, I shall do that. All right, we're gonna head to the other room first.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
Oof. I'm just gonna go and you can just stay in that room. Yes. Get your coffee. You wrote a story too? You did a spoopy one. Would you like to share? I got candle. One candle. Hello, me. That art was made by Kalio Ubu. Much thanks. We're back. Rabbit's gonna haunt his coffee. S'more.
I'm a muffin.
Wait, I don't have a muffin.
It's okay. I have a muffin. I'm currently eating it. It's a ghost muffin though, so it's cool.
A ghost muffin. I see. That makes sense.
Yeah. I'm haunting my ghost muffin.
Short spook story. Ooh, that's a perfect time. What would be the best way to send your text? Is there like a word limit in whispers? Or DM me on Twitter? Either works. Danica, welcome! Yes, it's a muffin, but it's a ghost muffin. The ghost muffin. Is a ghost muffin filled with ectoplasm?
It's filled with spooky pumpkins.
Oh, is it spooky spice pumpkin or just like normal
pumpkin? It's like a stroop. It's like I don't know. It's something that starts with an S. That's like German. I don't know if it's strudel. Like strudel muffin.
I don't know.
But it's definitely a muffin. It's kind of cinnamony. Very good.
Cinnamony ectoplasm pumpkin muffin. Ghost muffin. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
For my ghost breakfast.
For your ghost breakfast and your ghost coffee. Man, I want a muffin. Do I have a muffin? I don't have a muffin. So, hi. Hello, welcome. We're doing some spooky story readings. The next one is called The Butterfly, and it's written by the one and only AntiRabbit. That is haunting my sake cups right here. The Butterfly. Sarah Lennox had been studying what felt like nonstop for the last 3 days. Every moment of her free time, when she wasn't at class or with a therapist, had her face in a book or at the library trying not to fall asleep while doing both. She had a lot of work to catch up on, having missed most of the academic year. She didn't know if she hated the review board or was grateful to them for letting her continue after what happened. Some nights, like this night, she was thankful for all the chances she had been given to work past it all. See, sometime last year, before her final year at university, the same one she had went to for plenty of years before, her nephew and sister-in-law were brutally murdered. The detectives and doctors had all said that her brother had most likely suffered from acute psychosis and had killed all 3 of them. Since then, she had been regularly seeing her doctor, therapist, family friend, whatever her parents had chosen to call him that day. His name was Dr. Montague? Sarah didn't remember what his first name was and instead sometimes imagined it was Doctor, which made her laugh. In fact, the only thing she really knew about him, besides the way that he asked the strangest questions as if they were the most normal things in the world, was that he liked South American archaeology. During the first few months, Sarah's parents always called or texted, and even one time emailed, to make sure that she was taking the pills he had prescribed for her. They really didn't need to. She was taking them willingly every day, anything to stop her from seeing the crumpled little form of her nephew in the middle of the night. Those were her parents, though, wanting to make sure she was shipshape to finish her education. She continued to rationalize it by reminding herself that college was expensive, and if it was her money paying the way, she would have done the same. But they'd always been that way with everything about her life. Her brother had been the sports star and golden child, perfect to take over the family business, and it was up to her to add to the family in other ways. She had hated the sound of being a doctor, all those sick people and no room to make a mistake, and knew she didn't have the charisma required for a lawyer. The only options her mother and father had left her with was engineering. They had even forced her to decide between the various acceptance letters she had received, while all the guests to her high school graduation party looked on in uncomfortable awkwardness. Like most of what her parents decided, though, she hadn't minded much. She liked nerd stuff, and had always found math easier than her peers did. The typical 6-figure salary would be an eventual plus, too. So off she went to an engineering school somewhere in the desert, but not too far from where her family lived in the city. That was what she had been studying that night. Even after the library proper had closed and the red-faced librarian had huffed and told her she had to move to the little lobby room which was always open. The small room, which opened out onto the stairs leading up to the rest of the campus, had one small table, and was lit more by the vending machine than the soft yellow light hanging from the ceiling. Even though the poor lighting had given her a headache for the last hour, she had pushed through. Sarah shoved the open notebook and textbooks away from her and stretched out her arms. Her watch said it was past midnight, and she decided to call it a night. It wasn't that she felt tired or wanted to sleep. Rather, she felt the night air would do good for her mind and hopefully ease the growing ache in her head. As she began putting away her papers and books into the bag, she noticed a strange ticking noise had returned. She had first heard it right after the murders, a strange click-like buzz at the edge of her hearing. It had grown louder at night, like an angry rattlesnake and the crinkling of summer cicada, especially when her dead nephew would visit her. Before the pills, when she was too terrified to leave her room and had blacked out all the windows, the boy had tried to tell her something. But every time his mouth moved, whatever words came out were drowned in the radio-static ticking noise. After Dr. Montague started giving her those dangerously large capsule pills, she had not seen her nephew or heard the ticking noise at all. Now she could hear it starting up again, and it had been for the last few days. The pills had made her drowsy, and it had made it hard to focus. If it wasn't for her incredibly understanding professors and her friends' immaculately written notes, she would probably have flunked out long ago. But now final exams were here, and she couldn't rely on anyone else to get things done for her. She had asked Dr. Montague if she could stop taking the pills, but only for a short time doing finals, in order to concentrate on studying and performing well. To her surprise, he had agreed. He had made it clear that during this time the visits, what he had called her hallucinations, may come back due to the stress. However, he was confident in the therapy work they had done. He insisted, though, that she call him immediately if she felt out of control and to not start taking the pills again without talking to him first. They had also agreed not to tell her parents until after the exams. As Sarah walked out the doors and into the cool desert night, the sound grew louder in her mind. She began to do what she had learned from the doctor and let her mind wander. She thought about all the classes that took place in the daytime. The campus was both new and an old place. Many of the buildings, mostly the laboratories and classrooms for engineering students, were new and clean. There were 3 new large buildings where open-air catwalks with high guardrails and blocky stairwells. Sarah liked to sit in the open cafe-like picnic tables on the 3rd floor during the days. The wide, near 360-degree view was relaxing for her, and most of the 3rd floor rooms were faculty offices, and she was routinely left alone. At nighttime, though, she couldn't stand being up that high and in the open. They were the tallest buildings on campus, and while she didn't often suffer from vertigo, being above all the trees and the sad pathway lights that were flickering pools of safety from the night made her feel woozy and foreign. The campus was far enough into the desert that the stars could be seen littering the sky. It had confused her at first, the feeling of being so far above the earth and still so apart from the sky. It seemed to her that daytime refuge at night instilled a sense of trespassing, being where she didn't belong. The campus had older buildings as well, some still in use and others boarded up and left alone. Before the university had purchased it, the land had been an Air Force base. The older administration buildings, now overgrown with weeds and tall grass, once managed the entire air base which operated out of the nearby, now also overgrown and abandoned airport. The old community center had been the gathering place for officers and their families for all sorts of events, but now was replaced with a shining student union where students could relax and get food. The old training building, where classes were given to airmen and officers, was refurbished and repurposed to teach biology and life sciences. Most other veteran buildings from the old days were transformed and repurposed into faculty administration, such as the old VA hospitals, which now served as a student housing association office. This building was the last one Sarah had to pass on her way home. She lived in campus housing, but the houses for upperclassmen and graduates were separated from the campus by a wild swath of undeveloped desert. They were referred to by the student body as the old villages. Old plaster houses that used to hold the base's permanent stuff, but now were dried, cracked homes for students. It was not uncommon to find sewer roaches a finger in length climbing up from the kitchen sink, or wolf spiders lurking in the pile of unwashed laundry in the corner, or desert scorpions crawling through the cracks in the doorframe. But the housing was affordable and provided a consistent privacy and quiet that Sarah felt she needed. The housing director had even taken pity on her and agreed to set her up with her own private house, given all that she had been through. She didn't know if he had truly cared for her situation or was more interested in saving some other student from being paired up with a crazy lady. She supposed it didn't really matter that much. She had her privacy, her space, and things had been going well since coming back to school. Sarah was coming to the end of the field, and she stopped at the edge of the curb. It always gave her a strange feeling, as if she was crossing some boundary to another world. The open field was behind her, with its dusty potholes and twiggy bushes. Even further behind her were the lights of the new campus building, even this far seen clearly. But in front of her was a quiet neighborhood with dark, curving streets, gravel lawns, concrete driveways, and the hum of air conditioning units. To Sarah, it seemed as if the noise of the AC units melded with the ticking in her head, making the whole night sound like it was next to a rushing river. Her thoughts began to flow into the next as she walked past the houses and across the street lamp lights. Many of the houses in this part of the village were occupied, and some still had lights on despite how late it was. She knew that inside there would be bleary-eyed students studying or procrastinating in front of the TV, or getting much-needed sleep in the dark. She wondered if they would talk to her if she knocked on the door, and what they would say. She was lost in these thoughts when she noticed something further away down the street and came to a sudden stop. Ahead, right as the road split and turned gently into the right, sitting on just the edge of a street lamp's cone of light, Something was watching her. It looked like a man, but taller, now stockier. She didn't know, couldn't tell. It had faint eyes, like how a shape catches light at night from the hall in your bedroom. It kept changing while she looked at it, but she didn't know how. As she stood there, gazing down the quiet and nearly empty street, she knew she had seen it before. Just now on campus, near those new buildings down the pathway, and again in the field at the far edges when she looked back. It had been following her. Well, she thought as she kept walking. The doctor had said these visits may be more frequent, but they aren't real. Each side street she passed, Sarah looked as far down as she could and saw the thing again. Always far away, always with those strange eyes. Even now, as she looked down one lazy street that turned in no particular hurry, she saw the thing by a dark, unlit house with a large tree. From behind the tree came another one, this one much like the same as the first, but altogether separate. Or maybe there had always been two of them, just watching, just changing. Finally, she came to stand under the lamp at the far end of the street. Nothing was there, no creature formed in the shadows here. But there were many now further along, waiting and watching. It seemed now to Sarah, as she watched these shifting things, that the ticking grew louder, and had been with each step she had taken. Has it always been this piercing? She covered her ears to block the noise, but she knew it would be no use. The noise had returned for something, and she knew now, but the watchers were here to see it. Suddenly she remembered, in a flash, her first appointment with Dr. Montague. It had been her worst day since finding the bodies. He had been inspecting the scratches on her arms and face she had given herself the night before, asking questions about her nail polish, of all things, even though she hadn't painted them in weeks. Somehow, something he did had made her jerk her arm away from him, and he had accidentally cut her somehow. He had said that fate now bound them, and his work with her would be to undo that cut. It healed strangely and left an unusual scar. Dr. Montague had used it as a tool, saying that when she was scared or was visited to remember that pain, to remember it was real. Now, standing under the lamplight, trying desperately to block the noise out, she remembered the strange mark on her arm and clasped it tightly. It was warm at first, and seemed to get hotter until she was afraid it would burn her. But just as she could take no more without calling out, the noise started to fade, and the watchers in the shadow moved deeper into the dark, away from her. She let out a long breath she didn't know she had held in, and began to walk down the street again, not sure of the direction. Her home was somewhere in the far back of the villages, where the officers lived, in an otherwise empty cul-de-sac. The streets were a maze in the dark, each dark doorstep looking like the next, but they would all lead out to the edge of the desert beyond, and she could find her way from there. The noise had subsided to a strange squeaking, like the drip of a faucet or the turning of a wooden screw, where she found herself standing at the edge of the neighborhood playground. She saw the metal slide and the monkey bars, which would burn you badly in the summer, and the broken merry-go-round that sat askew, refusing to spin again, and the dual swing set, which was the only equipment still used. A small figure sat on the swing, with its back to her. It swung lightly on its perch, creating a slow rhythmic squeaking from the chains. "Auntie Xiaoa, come push me," its voice called to her without turning. She hadn't heard that voice in so long, not even during those bad days. She had to fight to hold back tears and rush to her nephew. She knew this wasn't real, but came up behind the small shape anyways and pushed the chains gently. "Not too high, Auntie Xiaoa," she reminded herself silently. "You don't want to go too high." The child used to laugh and smile on the swing set whenever she pushed him. Unless, of course, she pushed him too high or too fast, in which case he would yell for her to stop and to get off to scold her about safety before getting back on to try again. She had to fight back laughing at how his tiny face scrunched up in toddler rage. But the figure she was pushing on the creaky swing neither laughed or yelled, and although she couldn't see its face, she knew it wasn't smiling either. Sarah gave one final push before letting the swing slow down, swaying forward and back to the dim squeak of rusted chains. Push me higher, Auntie Sarah. The voice came again. Figure still did not turn. Sarah began to slowly step around the swing to see the face of the young boy in the seat. Shock and fear lightning through her as she saw the bruises and broken flesh that was her dead nephew. Remembering all the hours spent preparing for this moment with the doctor, she swallowed her terror and knelt before him. You wouldn't like it, remember? You always said it wasn't safe to go too high. It sat silently on the swing now. The squeaking stopped, and looked down into Sarah's upturned face. The side of its features were bruised, broken, not much more than a mangled mash of purple and red flesh. Its lip was broken, and splintered teeth could be seen jutting through. The whole front of its clothes were stained and red, and caved in as if a heavy object has crushed its chest. But Sarah did not look away this time. I'm sorry that I can't push you on the swing anymore, and that your daddy did this to you. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to protect you. The figure's eyes and mouth opened wide, the bruises and broken bones popping and crackling sickeningly. A great cacophony of the noise poured out and all around. The great ticking, now so close to its source, formed wet, pulpy words in Sarah's mind. Its voice was deep and resounded through her mind, molding itself deep into her thoughts and twisting her mind in maddening ways. You have been chosen. I can take you now to the land of eternity, where the stars are born and molded, sorrows are forced into the earth, and birds in the wonders of the worms. There you will know all things, feel no despair, and forever gaze into the corners of sentence. Take the vessel to hand, marked one, and lay your love beside your mind. No sooner had her heart beat than the figure reached out and clasped Sarah's arm. She did not struggle or call out, but watched in stunned horror as great fleshy wings spread out from the figure's back. Sharp, sinewy, and dripping, they were folded like a butterfly at rest. Then they furled about both figures tightly, crushing them into each other. Together they left this alien earth and soared deeper through the carpet of stars. It was The Butterfly by AntiRabbit. Oh, wow, great timing, Mubot.
I return.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
I want more.
There is a second one.
Is there a sequel for this?
For that particular one? No. For that one kind of ended there.
I have like really nice visuals in my head for it. Kind of gory as well.
I'm glad that you. Yeah. That one was the most visually gross, I think. The other one's not so much, but that's okay. I'm glad that you liked it though.
It's amazing. Thank you for writing it and cramming it into the very tight timeline.
Oh, it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun writing that one. It was really cool. I am gonna have to getting ready for work in like maybe like 30-40 minutes.
Okay.
So if you would like me to read another one, I'd be happy to. And then
time works,
I will.
Definitely. Okay, let me just hop into the room real quick.
Okay, yeah.
Third step. Wait. Okay. We'll be getting another one by the AntiRabbit. Guys, welcome! That was amazing, right? Which of the two are like hardest to write, or rather like took longer to write for you?
And it scarred me as a child. So that's the second one. This last one, was a fully original story by me. Kind of a little bit based off of like some things that happened in like when I went to college and stuff. But this one was most fun to write. It did take a little bit of like time. I went for a walk a few days ago, a very long walk, and it was a mistake. But during that walk, because my feet are all like super blistered now. It was like 16 miles, but
miscalculation
something like
on the
24
distance.
kilometers or something. Yeah, it was it was a little long, but during that walk, I came up with everything about that story. So, yeah.
Speed.
So
Ready for
I'm
that
gonna
second?
read
Yeah, if you are.
Poetry and the Gods. Yeah. Okay.
Go for it.
I think I should have time for. Let me see. Yeah, my alarm's gonna go off like right in the middle of it, but that's fine. So this one's shorter than the other one. It's okay. I turned it off. Okay. Let me get some water.
Hydrate.
I have some water.
Yeah,
Okay, this one's also by H.P. Lovecraft. So I got the other one. Okay, ready?
Ready.
Okay. Poetry and the Gods. A damp, gloomy evening in April it was, just after the close of the Great War, when Marcia found herself alone with strange thoughts and wishes, unheard of yearnings which floated out of the spacious 20th century drawing room, up the misty deeps of the air, and eastward to far olive groves in Arcadia, or Arcady, not Arcadia, which she had seen only in her dreams. She had entered the room off the glaring chandeliers and now reclined on a soft divan by a solitary lamp which shed over the reading table a green glow as soothing and delicious as moonlight through the foliage about an antique shrine. Attired simply in low-cut evening dress of black, she appeared outwardly a typical product of modern civilization. But tonight she felt an immeasurable gulf that separated her soul from all her prosaic surroundings. Was it because of the strange home in which she lived? That abode of coldness where relations were always strained, and the inmates scarcely more than strangers. Was it that? Or was it some greater and less explicable misplacement in time and space, whereby she had been born too late, too early, or too far from the haunts of her spirit, ever to harmonize with the unbeautiful things of contemporary reality? To dispel the mood which was engulfing her more deeply each moment, she took a magazine from the table and searched for some healing bit of poetry. Poetry had always relieved her troubled mind better than anything else, though many things in the poetry she had seen detracted from the influence. Over parts of even the sublimest verses hung a chill vapor of sterile ugliness and restraint, like dust on a window pane through which one views a magnificent sunset. Listlessly turning the magazine's pages as if searching for an elusive treasure, she suddenly came upon something which dispelled her languor. An observer could have read her thoughts and told her that she had discovered some image or dream which brought her nearer to her unattained goal than any image or dream she had seen before. It was only a bit of vers libre, that pitiful compromise of the poet who overlaps prose yet falls short of the divine melody of numbers. But it had in it all the unstudied music of a bard who lives and feels, who gropes ecstatically for unveiled beauty, devoid of regularity. It yet had the wild harmony of winged, spontaneous words, a harmony missing from the formal, convention-bound verse she had known. As she read on, her surroundings gradually faded, and soon there lay about her only the mists of dream, the purple, star-strewn mists of time, where only gods and dreamers walk. Moon over Japan, white butterfly moon, where the heavy-lidded Buddhas dream, to the sound of the cuckoo's call, the white wings of moon butterflies flickered down the streets of the city. blushing into silence the useless wicks of round lanterns in the hands of girls. Moon over the tropics, a white curved bud opening its petals slowly in the warmth of heaven. The air is full of odors and languorous warm sounds. A flute drones its insect music to the night, below the curving metal moon petal of the heavens. Moon over China, weary moon on the river of the sky. A stir of light in the willows is like the flashing of 1,000 silver minnows. Through dark shoals, the tiles on graves and rotting temples flash like ripples. The sky is flecked with clouds like the scales of a dragon. Amid the mists of the dream, the reader cried to the rhythmical stars of her delight at the coming of a new age of song, a rebirth of Pan. Half closing her eyes, she repeated her words, whose melody lay hid like crystals at the bottom of a stream before the dawn. Hidden but to gleam effulgently at the birthday. Moon over Japan, white butterfly moon. Moon over the tropics, a white curved bud opening its petals slowly in the warmth of heaven. The air is full of odors and languorous warm sounds. Moon over China, weary moon on the river of the sky, weary moon. Out of the mists gleamed godlike the form of a youth in winged helmet and sandals, caduceus bearing, and a beauty like nothing on earth. Before the face of the sleeper, he thrice waved the rod which Apollo had given him in trade for the 9-corded shell of melody, and upon her brow he placed a wreath of myrtle and roses. Then adorning, Hermes spoke. O nymph, more fair than the golden-haired sisters of Chian, or the sky-inhabiting Atlantides, beloved of Aphrodite and blessed of Pallas, thou hast indeed discovered the secret of the gods, which lieth in beauty and song. O prophetess more lovely than the Sibyl of Cumae, when Apollo first knew her, thou hast truly spoken of the new age. For even now on Maenalus, Pan sighs and stretches in his sleep, wishful to awake and behold about him the little rose-crowned fawns and the antique satyrs. In thy yearning thou hast divined what no mortal else, saving only a few whom the world rejects, remembereth that the gods were never dead, but only sleeping the sleep of and dreaming the dreams of gods in lotus-filled Hesperian gardens beyond the golden sunsets. And now draweth nigh the time of their waking, when coldness and ugliness shall perish, and Zeus sit once more upon Olympus. Already the sea of Paphos trembleth into a foam which only ancient skies have looked upon before. And at night on Helicon the shepherds hear strange murmurings and half-remembered notes. Woods and fields are tremulous at twilight, and with the shimmering of white salient forms, and immemorial ocean fields, up curious sights beneath thin moons. The gods are patient, and have slept long, but neither man nor giant shall defy the gods forever. In Tartarus the Titans writhe, and beneath the fiery Athena groan the children of Uranus and Gaia. The day now dawns when men must answer for the centuries of denial, but in sleeping the gods have grown kind, and will not hurl him into the gulf made for the deniers of gods. Instead, will their vengeance smite the darkness, fallacy, and ugliness which have turned the mind of man. And under the sway of bearded Saturnus shall mortals, once more sacrificing unto him, dwell in beauty and delight. This night thou shalt know the favor of the gods, and behold on Parnassus those dreams which the gods have through the ages sent to earth to show that they are not dead. For poets and the dreams of the gods, and in each age someone hath sung unknowing the message and the promise from the lotus gardens beyond the sunset. Then in his arms Hermes bore the dreaming maiden through the skies. Gentle breezes from the tower of Ilos wafted them high above warm-scented seas, till suddenly they came upon Zeus, holding court on a double-headed Parnassus, his golden throne flanked by Apollo and the Muses on the right hand, and by ivy-wreathed Dionysus and pleasure-flushed Bacchae on the left hand. So much of the splendor Marcia had never seen before, either awake or in dreams, but its radiance did her no injury, as would have the radiance of lofty Olympus, for in this lesser court the Father of Gods had tempered his glories for the sight of mortals. Before the laurel-draped mouth of the Corsian cave sat in rows 6 noble forms with the aspect of mortals, but the countenance of gods. These the dreamer recognized from images of them which she had beheld, and she knew that they were none else than the divine Maenads, the Avernian Dante, the more than mortal Shakespeare, the chaos-exploring Milton, the cosmic Goethe, and the Musean Keats. These were those messengers from whom the gods had sent to tell men that Pan had not passed away, but only slept. For it is in poetry that gods speak to men. Then spake the Thunderer, O daughter, for being one of my endless line, thou art indeed my daughter. Behold, upon ivory thrones of honor the august messengers that gods have sent down, that in the words and writings of men there may be still some trace of divine beauty. Other bards have men justly crowned with enduring laurels, but these hath Apollo crowned, and these have I sat in places apart as mortals who have spoken the language of the gods. Long have we dreamed in lotus gardens beyond the west, and spoken only through our dreams. The time approaches when our voices shall not be silent. It is a time of awaking and of change. Once more hath faith in ridden low, searing the fields and drying the streams. In Gaul, lone nymphs with disordered hair weep beside fountains that are no more, and pine over rivers turned red with the blood of mortals. Ares and his train have gone forth with the madness of the gods, and have returned. Deimos and Phobos gluttered with unnatural delight. Tellus moans with grief, and the faces of men are as the faces of the Erinyes, even as when Astraea fled to the skies, and the waves of our bidding encompassed all the land, saving this high peak alone. Amidst this chaos, prepared to herald his coming, yet to conceal his arrival, even now toileth our last-born messenger, in whose dreams we are all the images which other messengers have dreamed before him. It is that we have chosen to blend into one glorious whole all the beauty and the world hath known before, and to write words wherein shall echo all the wisdom and the loveliness of the past. He it is who shall proclaim our return, and sing of the days to come when fauns and dryads shall haunt their accustomed groves in beauty. Guided was our choice by those who now sit before the Corsian grotto of thrones of ivory, and in whose songs thou shalt hear notes of sublimity, by which years hence thou shalt know the greater messenger when he cometh. Attend their voices as one by one they sing to thee here. Each note shalt thou hear again in the poetry which is to come, the poetry which shall bring peace and pleasure to thy soul. Though search for it through bleak years thou must. Attend with diligence, for each chord that vibrates away into hiding shall again appear to thee after thou hast returned to earth, as Alpheus, sinking his waters into the soul of Hellas, appears as the crystal Arthusa in remote Silica. Then arose Homeros, the ancient among bards, who took his lyre and chaunted his hymn to Aphrodite. No word of Greek did Marcia, yet did the message not fall vainly upon her ears, for in the cryptic rhythm was that which spake to all mortals and gods, and needed no interpreter. So too the songs of Dante and Goethe, where unknown words clave the ether with melodies easy to read and to adore. But at last remembered accents resounded before the listener. It was the swan of Avon, once a god among men, and still a god among gods. Write, that from the bloody course of war, my dearest master, my dearest son may hie. Bless him at home in peace, whilst I from afar his name with zealous fervor sanctify. Accents still more familiar arose as Milton, blind no more, declaimed immortal harmony. Or let thy lamp at midnight hour be seen in some high lonely tower, where I might outwatch the bear with thrice great Hermes, or unsphere the spirit of Pluto to unfold what worlds or what vast regions hold the immortal mind that hath forsook her mansion in this fleshly nook. Sometime let gorgeous tragedy and spectred Paul come sweeping by, presenting Thebes or Peloponnesus' line, or the tale of Troy divine. Last of all came the young voice of Keats, closest of all the messengers to the beauteous fawn folk. Heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. Therefore, ye soft pipes, play on. When old age shall this greatest generation waste, thou shalt remain in midst of other woe. Then ours, a friend to man, to whom thou sayest, beauty is truth, truth is beauty. That is all. Ye know on earth, and all ye need to know. As the singer ceased, there came a sound in the wind blowing far from Egypt, where at night Aurora mourns by the Nile for her slain son Memnon. To the feet of the thunderer flew the rosy-fingered goddess, and kneeling cried, Master, it is time I unlocked the gates of the east. And Phobos, handing his lyre to Calliope, his bride among the muses, prepared to depart for the jeweled and columned raised palaces of the sun, where fretted the steeds, already harnessed to the golden car of the day. So Zeus descended from his carven throne and placed his hand upon the head of Marcia, saying, Daughter, the dawn is nigh, and it is well that thou shouldst return before the awaking of mortals to thy home. Weep not at the bleakness of thy life, for the shadow of false faiths will soon be gone, and the gods shall once more walk among men. Search thou unceasingly for our messenger, for in him wilt thou find peace and comfort. By his word shall thy steps be guided to happiness, and in his dreams of beauty shall thy spirit find all that it craveth. As Zeus ceased, a young Hermes gently seized the maiden and bore her up toward the fading stairs, up and westward over unseen seas. Many years have passed since Marcia dreamt of the gods and of their Parnassian conclave. Tonight, she sits in the same spacious drawing room. She is not alone. Gone is the old spirit of unrest, for beside her is one whose name is luminous with celebrity, the young poet of poets, at whose feet sits all the world. He is reading from a manuscript words which none has ever heard before, but which, when heard, will bring to men the dreams and fancies they lost so many centuries ago, when Paean lay down to doze in Arcady, and the greater gods withdrew to sleep in lotus gardens beyond the lands of the Hesperides. In the subtle cadences and hidden melodies of the bard, the spirit of the maiden has found rest at last, for there echo the divinest notes of Thracian Orpheus, notes that moved the very rocks and trees by Herbus's banks. The singer ceases, and with eagerness asks a verdict. Yet what can Marcia say, but the strain is fit for the gods? And, as she speaks, there comes again the visions of Parnassus, and the far-off sound of a mighty voice saying, By his word shall thy steps be guided to happiness, and in his dreams of beauty shall thy spirit find all that it craveth. Papa. And that's it.
Papa.
And then it goes into more spooky stuff.
It goes into more spooky. This one was more
Yeah.
like a mysterious.
Yeah, it was not exactly what I would consider super spooky. It was definitely less spooky than I remember it being. That's okay.
That's
some
fine. It was a
brief
great one.
brevity,
Mhm.
some levity.
Gotta have a nice balance, of course.
Yeah. So there are only a couple left, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You all right time-wise?
I am okay time-wise. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and start getting ready for my work day.
Thank you so much.
But I'll be
First
around.
thing in the morning.
I'll be lurking.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy. Thank you for letting me do this. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for helping me with it.
Yeah, of course.
Really
anytime.
appreciate it.
I'm happy to share the Rabbinomicon anytime.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta go now. Back to
Take
the spirit
care.
world. I gotta go.
Oh no!
Spirits
it
are
goes
very
back into
smelly if you don't wash them.
the sake bottle.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, is it because I'm a spirit and sake is a spirit?
Yeah,
I get it.
Yes, yes. I was big brain enough, and I totally thought of that. Yes. What
right.
I said.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Yeet.
Poof. And that, my friends, was AntiRabbit. Please check him out. Again, his commissions are open for writing. If anybody has a text-related thing they would like to use for stream or whatnot, please hit him up. DMs are open. Would recommend. Yes. Emperor, welcome. He's gone forever. No, he'll be back. We still have one more story from Rabbit that I'm very excited to read. I should do that. And let's see. So we finished. That was the 4. I'm totally keeping count of the the story. I don't even know. Tokoya. I swear to God, having like 2 screens is not. Was that the? It was. Okay. To slide into his DMs because he's a hottie. Yes. It's so true. And off we go. The table of contents is missing one. Nani? We've got 3 candles. No. Okay, the candles are out. Hopefully there aren't any spirits around. Oh, we're good. Good. Okay, save. We head back. Table of contents is missing is the second story. Nani? Gacha gods have blessed us. Yes. See, for the next story, we have a submission by Steer@0 in chat. Very, very fresh. Just got it in DMs right now. This one's shorter one compared to the other ones that I have. So I'll read this. Thank you for the stretch. I stretch. Swampy! Welcome! The Mask of the Red. I have that as in the table of contents, except it's like the big heading. And then the rest of the stories are followed with that. So dusty, the wall got hand marks and everything. What hand marks? I don't see any hand marks. These are like paper. You don't really like touch those kind of walls. Dun 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 dun! Fantastic violin playing fingers? What are you talking about, Curry? You need to get your eyes checked. I see nothing. I see nothing. I don't know what you're talking about. I pretend I do not see. And to have a fresher story. Yeah. Don't refresh. Colorblind thing? Sorry. Okay. Understandable. Have a nice day. Okay. Our 5th story. Called The Dream Journal, Aldebaran by Steelrat. That night, I was going to college. But not for a class. I went for a show in an auditorium. But the sheer darkness of the place got me sleepy, leaning to the left of my seat. And there she was. Very close. Looking at me. We chatted, watched the show, laughed, held hands, hugged each other, kissed. Changed seats to be further back, to the empty rows. Just for us. We liked each other. We talked about many things, but I think my memory vanishes, like her, with every second. I wanted to know her, all about her, be with her. I came out of the venue first. Was it to take a call? I don't remember. Since it was near the end, I waited for her to come out of the line of people leaving. But I never saw her coming out, since she was already outside. She whispered, I have to go back. But only with her gaze. Her lips never moved, as she walked outside. I dreaded never to see her again. I followed, muttering, yelling, Don't go! Don't go! Give me your phone number! I want to see you again! We keep walking, on the sidewalk of the road out to college. She walked without looking back. What was her hurry? Was she to take a bus? But the internal bus stop was the opposite way. I screamed, What is your name? She turned around. With a perfect smile in her beautiful eyes, she murmurs, Aldebaran. and she kept walking. Are my legs that weak? She walked, and I jogged, yet the distance that separated us grew. I quickened my pace. Why was she in such a rush? Why did I have that feeling of despair, that I could never see her again? We almost reached outside the campus, but she turned right. This time, in the middle of the road, up the hill, I quickened again. A heavy mist covered all around us. Even for a night, it was so rare to see this much fog. I finally caught her up in my arms, but she was cold, pale, lighter, way too light. She looked at me with endearment as she put a gloved hand on my cheek. Those gloves soaked in my tears. I want to see you again, I said. She only said, I have to go. They are waiting for me. Again, no movement from her lips. I just felt the words. At that moment, I saw the entrance to a graveyard, at the side of a road between the mist. My blood froze. There are no burial grounds in campus. She was fading, losing her existence. I embraced her. Don't go, I implored. Stay with me. I could feel her tears dripping on her face as it covered her in warmth. I love you, she told me with her hands. She was already gauzy, the rhyme of her being floated inside the ajar doors of the cemetery. I kept holding her hand as she faded. That was the last part to disappear. Ever since, I never missed that show. It's an annual event, after all. Was The Dream Journal by Elderburn by Still Red. Stay with me. I'm like a horror version. Thank you so much for sharing that with us and letting me read it on stream. Really appreciate it. Man, writers or something. Writers or something else, my dear. That was our... I need to control this better. It's story. In my head canon, head canon. Yes, I have head canon. My head canon. He watches the show every year, and she comes back to him every year, like the star-crossed lovers. Oh, it's always me. Why is it not me? It's me again. It's me again. That was an actual dream of mine. Have you dreamt something similar again? Did you get a sequel of the dream? What did I on this morning? Last night. Last night, I dreamt that we were like I don't know who we is, but like there was a bunch of people in like a seminar or a workshop or an event, and then we had to like sit in carts, kind of like mine carts for the seminar, and then it suddenly turned into a roller coaster, except the roller coaster was like twisting and turning, and we couldn't leave the carts, and then partway through we started having something chase us as in like me and a whole bunch of people that I don't know. We're just kind of like black blobs. And there was just like dark shapes chasing the roller coaster carts. Like trying to get into the carts, but the carts kept running. And then I woke up. Yeah, so we have some of those sometimes. Unfortunately, no. Weird because I have sequel dreams often, but not this one. I don't really have sequel dreams as much, but I have like repeating dreams. I tend to dream like the same story-ish over and over, and it doesn't really go anywhere, and it usually ends at the same place as well. Isn't that strange? Like, you wake up at different times and you sleep for different hours, but like, if you have a repetitive dream, you end at the same place. Or maybe that's just me. Pisces, welcome! Thank you for the hydrate! Gets multiple dreams of getting stabbed in the stomach. Oh no. Oh no. Hey. You have a stomach though. I'm usually being chased by something. It's a very common theme. I tried like looking it up in those like dream symbolism things, and it's just like running from responsibilities, which is very accurate. You had a lucid dream last night? I don't think I've ever had a lucid dream. This dream sounds like my dating life. Uh-huh, uh-huh. Like your dating life is like actually a roller coaster and being chased. My dating life is like non-existent. It's like that abandoned bench in the theme park where everybody just kind of like forgets about. Run! Run! I'm running away from my responsibilities. Yeah, I'm getting called out from a dream. Like, those are the dreams that I have the most often, as like being chased by something. And then halfway through being chased, um, I suddenly realize that I'm able to fly and I just fly away from whatever was chasing me like I do with responsibility. It's so accurate, I'm crying. I was trying to clean a place from Ghost, a place on campus. Ah, is that how like how does that lead to like the auditorium in the show? Were you cleaning an auditorium? Wait, are you cleaning a place from Ghost? Are you an exorcist? Still right? Are you an exorcist? Laughing while flying away from responsibility. Yes, exactly. That's what happens. It goes away when I wake up. Oh. Naruhodo. Do I have relationship dreams? Not really. Maybe lately. I'm getting old. No new dream, but I noticed the campus was a mix of two different university campuses. I usually mix my high school, my high school, my high school, and my elementary school. I have lots of dreams in my elementary school for some reason, like kindergarten. Like, even though I went back there and like the campus totally changed, but I still get like dreams of like the old campus a lot. Because it's like school setting is just like a very strong. I don't even know I would say like strong memory since like I have awful memory. Like I can't remember what happens like when I was a kid or what happened when I was somewhere. I'm a very in the present kind of person, you know. I forget immediately if it's done. Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. My dream, I noticed a fusion, so that way I noticed it was a dream. Oh, did you take control of it after you noticed you were like lucid dreaming? Bicycles? どうした? Fish どうした? Bicycles? Running away from responsibilities, dreams of school, diagnosis, Jin does not want to be adulting. That's very accurate, yes. That's super accurate. Please. Basically. Kinda wanna no, do I wanna dream? I want a sequel for tomorrow. Maybe. But hopefully I don't get anything too spooky. Like reading theory stuff is okay, but I just don't like it when you dream about it and you can't control it. That's why I just like avoid horror in general most of the time. Left campus to try to take the bus home and wake up from the dream. Was the bus accurate? Was it like the correct bus home? Yes, don't we all? Nobody likes to adult. Who likes being an adult? Being an adult is awful. I dreaded being an adult since I was like 9 years old and like my 10th birthday was looming and I'm like, I don't want to hit the double digits. It feels like my life is ending if I hit the double digits. Black and white dream tried to run again in a rundown factory on a bicycle that doesn't go anywhere. Oh no. Oh no. I dream in color. I feel like I don't really dream in color. Worst kind of dream, alarm goes off, you get up and go through the morning routine and head off to school work. And then you don't really wake up. I have like those kind of dreams when I'm like having a nap and then I try to wake up, but I don't actually wake up, and then I just dream multiple scenarios of me waking up and actually having to do what I have to do like for the rest of the day. But like I'm still sleeping. The Grim Reader and get real cozy in my dreams. You do. You should write that story out as well, Rabbit. I think that would be a great story. The bus never showed up. I walked home, but stopped to try to wake from the dream by forcing it, and somehow in the dream I tried calling my mom to wake me up, and she held my hand and woke up. Oh. Oh! Interesting. Not a dream, but sleep paralysis is scary. I not experienced that myself personally, but I've heard it's can be very, very scary. You sleep paralysis demons. When you wake up 5 minutes, realizing you just turned your alarm off half asleep and went back to sleep. Ah. And I relate. And I relate. Like it would be a spooky alarm. It's Aero spoopy, let's go. I remember I don't live with my mom and so I woke to another dream. What? Inception. You got some Inception stuff going on there. Alright, where were we? This one's done. It's done. It's done. Done. Let's do the Mask of the Red Death. This one's not too long, I think. This is... by Edgar Allan Poe. Okay, cool. It doesn't pick up my mouse scroll. Wait, does it? Does it? Maybe. There. Excited for this one? Let's go! Okay. The Mask of the Red Death by Edgar Allan Poe. The Red Death had long devastated the country. No pestilence had ever been so fatal or so hideous. Blood was its avatar and its seal, the redness and the horror of blood. There were sharp pains and sudden dizziness, and then profuse bleeding at the pores, the dissolution. The scarlet stains upon the body and especially upon the face of the victim, where the pest band was shut out of the aid, and from the sympathy of his fellow men, and the whole seizure, progress, and termination of the disease were the incidents of half an hour. But the Prince Prospero was happy and dauntless and sagacious. Sagacious? When his dominions were half depopulated, he summoned to his presence 1,000 hale and light-hearted friends from among the knights and dames of his court, and with these retired to the deep seclusion of one of his castellated abbeys. This was an extensive and magnificent structure, the creation of the prince's own eccentric yet august taste. A strong and lofty wall girdled it in. This wall had gates of iron. The courtiers, having entered, brought furnaces and massy hammers and wielded the bolts. They resolved to leave means neither of ingress or egress, the sudden impulse of despair or a frenzy from within. The abbey was amply provisioned. With such precautions, the courtiers might bid defiance to contagion. The external world could take care of itself. In the meantime, it was folly to grieve or to think. The prince had provided all the appliances of pleasure. There were buffoons, there were improvisatory, there were ballet dancers, there were musicians, there was beauty, and there was wine. All these in security were within. Without was the Red Death. This is COVID, isn't it? Yeah, he's just like having the time of his life. He's got his internet connection, he's got his entertainment. Also, I'm like tripping over so many words in this. Holy crap. This is about Boris. This is about COVID. Thank you for the work, Fish. Take care. It was towards the close of the 5th or 6th month of his seclusion, while the pestilence raged most furiously abroad, that the Prince Prospero entertained his 1,000 friends at a mass ball of the most unusual magnificence. It was a voluptuous scheme, that masquerade. But first, let me tell of the rooms in which it was held. There were 7, an imperial suite. In many palaces, however, such suites form a long and straight vista, while the folding doors slide back nearly to the walls on either hand, so that the view of the whole extent is scarcely impeded. Here the case was very different. As might have been expected from the Duke's love of the bizarre, the apartments were so irregularly disposed that the vision embraced but little more than one at a time. There was a sharp turn at every 20 or 30 yards, and at each turn a novel effect. To the right and left, in the middle of each wall, a tall and narrow Gothic window looked out upon a closed corridor, which pursued the windings of the suite. These windows were of stained glass, whose color varied in accordance with the prevailing hue of the decorations of the chamber into which it opened. That at the eastern extremity was hung, for example, in blue, and vividly blue were its windows. The second chamber was purple in its ornaments and tapestries, and here the panes were purple. The third was green throughout, and so were the casements. The fourth was furnished and lighted with orange, the fifth with white, the sixth with violet. The 7th apartment was closely shrouded in black velvet tapestries that hung all over the ceiling and down the walls, falling in heavy folds upon a carpet of the same material and hue. But in this chamber only, the color of the windows failed to correspond with the decorations. The panes here were of scarlet, a deep blood color. Now, in no one of the 7 apartments were there any lamp or candelabrum, amid the profusion of golden ornaments that lay scattered to and fro or depended from the roof. There was no light of any kind emanating from the lamp or candle within the suite of chambers, but in the corridors that followed the suite there stood, opposite each window, a heavy tripod, bearing a brazier of fire that projected its rays through the tinted glass and so glaringly illuminated the room. And thus were produced a multitude of gaudy and fantastic appearances. But in the western or black chamber, the effect of the firelight that streamed upon the dark hangings through the blood-tinted panes was ghastly in the extreme, and produced so wild a look upon the countenances of those who entered, that there were few of the company bold enough to set foot within its precincts at all. It was in this apartment, also, that there stood against the western wall a gigantic clock of ebony. Its pendulum swung to and fro with a dull, heavy, monotonous clang, and when the minute hand made the circuit of the face, and the hour was to be stricken, there came from the brazen lungs of the clock a sound which was clear and loud and deep and exceedingly musical, but of so peculiar a note and emphasis that at each lapse of an hour the musicians of the orchestra were constrained to pause momentarily in their performance, to hearken to the sound. And thus the waltzers perforce ceased their evolutions, and there was a brief disconcert of the whole gay company, and while the chimes of the clock yet rang, it was observed that the giddiest grew pale, and the more aged and sedate passed their hands over their brows as if in confused reverie or meditation. But when the echoes had fully ceased, a light laughter at once pervaded the assembly. The musicians looked at each other and smiled as if their own nervousness and folly, and made whispering vows, each to the other, that the next chiming of the clock should produce them no similar emotion. And then, after the lapse of 60 minutes, which embraced 3,600 seconds of the time that flies, there came yet another chiming of the clock, and then were the same disconcert and tremulousness and meditation as before. But in spite of these things, it was a gay and magnificent revel. The tastes of the dukes were peculiar. He had a fine eye for colors and effects. He disregarded the decor of mere fashion. His plans were bold and fiery, and his conceptions glowed with barbaric luster. There are some who would have thought him mad. His followers felt that he was not. It was necessary to see and hear and touch him to be sure that he was not. He had directed in great part the movable embellishments of the 7 chambers upon occasion of this great feat, and it was his own guiding taste which has given him character to the masqueraders. Be sure they were grotesque. There were much glare and glitter and piquancy and faint phantasm, much of what has been seen since Hernani. There are arabesque figures with unsuited limbs and appointments. There are delirious fancies such as the madman fashions. There are much of the beautiful, much of the wanton, much of the bizarre, something of the terrible, and not a little of which might have excited disgust. To and fro in the 7 chambers there stalked, in fact, a multitude of dreams. And these dreams, within and about, taking hue from the rooms and causing the wild music of the orchestra to seem as the echo of their steps. And anon there strikes the ebony clock which stands in the hall of the velvet. And then for a moment all is still, and all is silent save the voice of the clock. The dreams are stiff frozen as they stand. But the echoes of the chime die away. They have endured but an instant, and a light, half-subdued laughter floats after them as they depart. And now again the music swells, and the dreams live, and writhe to and fro more merrily than ever, taking hue from the many-tinted windows through which streams the rays from the tripods. But to the chamber which lies most westwardly of the 7, there are now none of the maskers who venture, for the night is waning away, and there flows a ruddier light through the blood-covered panes, and the blackness of the sable of drapery appalls. And to him whose foot falls upon the sable carpet, there comes from the near clock of ebony a muffled peal, more solemnly emphatic than any which reaches their ears who indulge in the more remote gaieties of other apartments. But these apartments were densely crowded, and in them beat feverishly the heart of life, and the revel went whirlingly on, until at length there commenced the sounding of midnight upon the clock. And then the music ceased, as I have told, and the evolutions of the waltzers were quieted, and there was an uneasy cessation of all things as before. But now there were 12 strokes to be sounded by the bell of the clock, and thus it happened. Perhaps that more of the thought crept, with more of time, into the meditations of the thoughtful among those who revelled. And thus too it happened, perhaps, that before the last echoes of the last chime had utterly sank into silence, there were many individuals in the crowd who had found leisure to become aware of the presence of a masked figure, which had arrested the attention of no single individual before. And the rumor of this new presence having spread itself whisperingly around, there arose at length from the whole company a buzz or murmur, expressive of disapprobation and surprise, then finally of terror, of horror, and of disgust. In an assembly of phantasms such as I have painted, it may well be supposed that no ordinary appearance could have excited such sensation. In truth, the masquerade license of the night was nearly unlimited, but the figure in question had out-Heroded Herod, and gone beyond the bounds of even the prince's indefinite decorum. There are chords in the heart of the most reckless which cannot be touched without emotion. Even with the utterly lost, to whom life and death are equally jest, there are matters of which no jest can be made. The whole company, indeed, seemed now deeply to feel that in the costume and bearing of the stranger neither wit nor propriety existed. The figure was tall and gaunt, and shrouded from head to foot in the habiliments of the grave. The mask which concealed the visage was made so nearly to resemble the countenance of a stiffened corpse that the closest scrutiny must have had difficulty in detecting the cheat. And yet all this might have been endured, if not approved, by the mad revellers around. But the murmur had gone so far as to assume the type of the Red Death. His vesture was dabbled in blood, and his broad brow, with all the features of the face, was besprinkled with the scarlet horror. When the eyes of Prince Prospero fell upon this spectral image, which was a slow and solemn movement, as if more fully to sustain its role, stalked to and fro among the waltzers, he was seen to be convulsed, in the first moment with a strong shudder either of terror or distaste, but in the next his brow reddened with rage. Who dares, he demanded hoarsely of the courtiers who stood near him, who dares insult us with this blasphemous mockery? Seize him and unmask him, that we may know whom we have to hang at sunrise from the battlements. It was in the eastern or blue chamber in which stood the Prince Prospero as he uttered these words. They rang throughout the 7 rooms loudly and clearly, for the prince was a bald and robust man, and the music had become hushed at the waving of his hand. He was in the blue room where stood the prince, with a group of pale courtiers by his side. At first, as he spoke, there was a slight rushing movement of this group in the direction of the intruder, who at the moment was also near at hand, and now, with deliberate and stately step, made closer approach to the speaker. But from a certain nameless awe with which the mad assumptions of the mummer had inspired the whole party, there were found none who put forth hand to seize him, so that, unimpeded, he passed within a yard of the prince's person, and while the vast assembly, as if with one impulse, shrank from the centers of the rooms to the walls, he made his way uninterruptedly, but with the same solemn and measured step which had distinguished him from the first, through the blue chamber, through the purple to the green, through the green to the orange, through this again to the white, and even thence to the violet, ere at a decided movement that had been made to arrest him. It was then, however, that the Prince Prospero, maddening with rage and shame of his own momentary cowardice, rushed hurriedly through the 6 chambers, while none followed him on account of a deadly terror that had seized upon all. He bore aloft a drawn dagger, and had approached in rapid impetuosity to within 3 or 4 feet of the retreating figure, when the latter, having attained the extremity of the velvet apartment, turned suddenly and confronted his pursuer. There was a sharp cry, and the dagger dropped gleaming upon the sable carpet, upon which instantly afterwards fell prostrate in death the Prince Prospero. Then, summoning the wild courage of despair, a throng of revellers at once threw themselves into the black apartment, and seizing the mummer, whose tall figure stood erect and motionless within the shadow of the ebony clock, gasped in unutterable horror at finding the grave sacraments and corpse-like mask which they handled with so violent a rudeness, untenanted by any tangible form. And now was acknowledged the presence of the Red Death. He had come like a thief in the night, and one by one dropped the revellers in the blood-bedewed halls of the revel, and died each in the despairing posture of his fall. And the life of the ebony clock went out, with that of the last of the gay, and the flames of the tripods expired, and darkness and decay and the Red Death held illimitable dominion over all. Was the Mask of the Red Death by Edgar Allan Poe. Crimson Yogurt, welcome! Well, cozy. I really like the words used for that one though. It's like a fancy pastry. I tend to like relate words and languages to food for some reason. Yeah. So that was our 6th story. Let's see where this leads us. So 6, did I skip one? Food's a mood, yes. Okay, 6. 6 candle. Behind you. Don't look back. We're back. Are we almost at our last one? Second last. Nothing behind, what a scam. Did you look well enough? Yes, Neon's behind you. It basically is. You saw? Told you not to look. Hum. Our next one is also by AntiRabbit. It's called Set Me Free. These journal entries were taken from the Journal of Jack Scotsman, a buccaneer at the turn of the 18th century. The Iceland of which he speaks has never been found. The body of Jack Scotsman was found in his cabin. His crew do not know how he died. I am writing these entries as a confession before God and man of my many sins. I do not do this to save my immortal soul or plead forgiveness, rather to serve as a warning to others of the curses that await on that small place. Perhaps some small part of me hopes those souls lost by what I have done may finally find peace. We made land on the island in our dinghy, my brother and me, having left our crew on board. I didn't trust them. Even now they stare daggers at my back and whisper plots of murder and mutiny. That's why we didn't take them with us to that cursed place. The shore was wide and the sands were soft. Even the small rise of hills on which grew a tame jungle raised no alarm in us. We had been tasked to locate the island and the supposed treasure within by one Dr. Montague. He had paid our price in full and promised untold treasure at our destination. He laid claim to only one little trinket, a necklace talisman, which we were to bring back for him. He gave us a chart for the island and a crude map written on faded leather. It was hard to read and smudged and worn, but we figured such a small island wouldn't be too hard to navigate once we arrived. We'd been mostly right in that assumption. If it hadn't been for the map and us knowing it was there, we would never have found the old, overgrown footpath around the side of the island in the grove of the palms. It was in these palms that the island showed us its first mystery. The sun-bleached skeleton of what looked like an old sailor laid against the palms with a shining gold cutlass protruding through his chest and pinning it to the palm behind it. My brother pondered how a corpse had arrived on an island the doctor had promised was undiscovered and uninhabited. I had to remind him that someone had to have made the maps and stashed the treasure. He had always been a bit slow when it came to new ideas or strange questions. He likely wouldn't have done well if I hadn't taken to a love of the sea. Wherever I went, he followed, and while I was learning charts and tables and how to judge the weathers and stars, he worked hard and well by the bosun's command. We had made our way of it, but a sailor's life was a hard one, not a guaranteed return. When Dr. Montague had given us his charge, he had given us hope for a better life. We had stood arguing over the dead seaman for more than was appropriate when a strange wind blew over the trees. In it, to my ears, I believe I could have heard a desperate voice pleading for help, like those half-mad pleas from a sailor who had drunk too much salt water. My brother insisted he had heard nothing on the wind, but I could tell he was shaken by it. He was a superstitious sort, believing in tales and signs. Whatever he had heard on that first call, I shuddered to know. We followed the footpath deeper into the island's jungles. The going was slow, but our blades cut the greenery for the way easily. The island was close and quiet away from the waves. Only our raking grunts broke the stillness. There were no birds or gulls calling out, no beast or game rustling the underbush. Even the buzz of the insects were eerily absent. It took us an hour or two to work our way through the faint trail. It had wound around the jungles in a dizzying and indiscernible fashion, often crossing back on itself or disappearing in front of us only to appear again in our left or right a ways back. The tough map that the doctor had provided served little to help foretell the destination. But eventually the path began to clear and led down to a shallow gulch, which may have once been a creek or stream. More vines layered the rocks and path, mimicking a cascading waterfall. A strange air blew between us and rustled many of the hanging vines in front of us. A cave mouth yawned open behind the vines, but pushing between them was nearly impossible because it had grown so intertwined. The only brief visibility revealed that the cave behind was small and wound back before turning behind a far wall. We began hacking away at these thicker vines, and before we were finished we were drenched in sweat. Above the entryway, covered and worn away by the time and the fretfully cut vines, was an inscription. I've included the inscriptions here in this text, but have not bothered with a translation, for we did not heed the warnings then. En tal el descanso de titanes de la isla, mal de coral de piedra estala es escape de la muerte. With the passage open, the air began to flow freely. It was a warm, musty, stale air, and did little to cool our overworked bodies. It stank of rot and iron, and what now I imagined to be the stench inside of a tomb. The path when entering the tunnel was soft packed sand, and the walls were smooth and dry to the touch. Very soon all light faded, and we groped along in the dark for an unknown length of time. Until ahead a faint glimmer of light began to show. Soon it began to grow and brighten all around them. Along with the light, the rank smell grew greater as well. It forced its way into our noses and mouths despite the shirt and clothes we held over our mouths. Almost to the end we heard the voice once more, calling much louder over the gagging smell. Set me free. The call was spectral and moaned over us, stopping in our tracks. My brother begged for us to go back, for us to get away from this haunted island, but I didn't listen. Instead, despite my fear, I rushed forward with only the thought of treasure in my mind. Not ready or scared enough to leave me to my fate, he trudged after me. We rounded the slight bend of the passageway and squeezed between two large stones. Suddenly we were out of the suffocating darkness of the passage, and stood now in a large echoing chamber. My brother's curses echoed back and forth on the walls, and up through the hole in the ceiling that lit the room. It was empty. There were only a few coins, and broken rotted chests lay empty. A small mound of dirt and stones were the only construct in the room, and it sat directly under the beam of light from above. Whether it was some arcane or occult thing, or just the sin of the greed in my heart, I approached the small stack of stones, while my brother was repelled by it. On the top, not able to be seen anywhere in the cave but right upon it, rested a necklace of strange stones. Have you come to set me free? The voice rose like a tide as I crossed into the pillar of light. There across me formed the spectral shape of a man. Vague and incorporeal he was. Only scraps of tattered cloths about his rotten form. It seemed his decaying gaze gazed into our very souls. There sits the star-fallen necklace upon the resting neck of the last Titan. Do you wish to claim it as your own? The ghost raised a desiccated hand and gestured at the pedestal before me. Or are you here for the otherworldly treasures that lay about you? On these words the apparition waved his arms about the room as if its plundered wealth still laid above him. There is nothing else. Look about you, spirit. It has all been taken. Only this cord remains, the one we were sent to retrieve. The spirit's arms lowered to its side slowly, and a whisper of air rushed about us as it sighed. Many chose their wealth when given the cost of the necklace. To claim the Titan's cord, you must wager your soul to him. It was long ago that I was given the wager and won the prize, but many long years called the token back, and now I am trapped as you will be. For the Titans must now always be paid their soul. For a long time, my brother and I argued back and forth after the spirit had faded into nothingness. He pleaded that we abandon the treasure and are charged to leave with our Christian souls intact. I was convinced we had to claim it, even if we had no plans to return it to the eccentric doctor. I knew it was the key to everything. All knowledge of man and machine, from before the seas were even formed. What secrets did it hold, and could it tell us if we took it then? The ghost needed us to take it for itself to be freed. I argued it was an act of charity to take it. The cost of our already damned souls was paid already through all the suffering and hardships we had endured. It was only our justifiable right to take it. Yet still my brother ardently opposed my logic. In a fit of fraternal rage, I did the unthinkable and drew my pistol and shot him in the heart. The price for the stars was a soul the Titan would have. The shocked and cold, confused expression on his face faded to a pale blankness as he slumped to the ground. Not fully aware of myself of the heinous act that I had committed, I snatched the string of stones and turned to run. Between the two standing stones, I squeezed myself and began to feel along the wall of the passage. In the darkness, I clutched my new prize to my chest and moved as quickly as I could. In the blinding dark, I only heard the strange howling of the breeze, amplified by the tunnel and the hot stench of air pressing behind me. As soon as I burst out of the wretched cave, past the warning words and into the gulch, the moaning wind rose to a piercing gale. On the torrent of wind there were words, repeated over and over again. Set me. At the wind's highest speed, the trees swayed and were ripped from the ground, and the earth itself began to tremble and shake. I ran with all the speed I could manage back down the path we had cleared. But the earth buckled and rolled under me. Trees and vines and plants toppled across the path before and behind me, trapping and confusing the way. My footing failed me many times, but I managed to keep hold of the precious necklace. Finally, I burst from the dense forest and back into the palm grove at which we had started. The vicious shaking and the violence in the earth had begun to subside, and breathlessly I hurried to the beach. The poor dead sailor we had seen before was nowhere to be found, yet miraculously our dinghy had remained beached and intact. As I rowed back to our ship, I stared at the treasure in my lap. Those perfect stones were stars, thousands of them. In all my readings I had never seen stones like them. Swirls and twists of color and light seemed to shine through them. I glanced at the shore before we cast off for home, and saw a figure standing there on the beach in the setting sun. Even from that distance, I could see the glowing, dark red stain dripping from his heart. That was Set Me Free by AntiRabbit. Jordy, welcome! Welcome to our spoopy reading tale series stream thing. Yes, welcome. Gallia! Gallia! Welcome, raiders! I was hoping to raid you after the speedrunning Spooks raid. How was your stream? How was the songs? So short. Why so short? Speedrunning Spook raid. Also affiliate, yes? Really, yes? Everybody go check out Calio. Uwu. Amazing artist, singer, gamer. X-Whale. Plus day 2. Are you almost done with it? Hehehe. Affiliate win. Shake my head. Shake my head. We're pressuring you, yes? For 7 days. Thank you for the raid! 7 more days. No, actually, I think like 2 more days or something, right? Until Calio gets affiliate. Please support to help. And pressure Calio into streaming more. Sure, because I wanted to listen to Kaidan. Nah. I think we're on our last one in the series. That one, that this one? Yes. I glanced through the history of the Necronomicon, and it's a lot of words that I cannot pronounce. I don't think I reread that one, though. But I actually didn't, know what it was. specifically. But yes. Guys, just said to Callow, hey man, that really cool thing you want to implement in your streams need affiliate. Yes. Like channel points and stuff, that an affiliate is required for that. Everyone is post, so it might always be hard to read. Redis. Oh, okay. I think that one had some names. It's mostly names and words. It's mostly names, I think, that I'm tripping over. But Rabbit read most of the ones with the most difficult names. So yes, thank God. Yumara daughter, thank you. This is my Halloween Frankenstein form. Couldn't live up to the hot dog, the amazing hot dog model. My goodness. I woke up. Good morning. You slept so late yesterday. What fun to know. Everybody go check out Forgotten Epics as well. Epics is also part of the Kaidan. I'm the last beta for this relay, but if you'd like to hear more, the VOD is up. Please check a lot. Check a lot to all the lovely people that are that are the part of this Kaidan. Yes, yes. Yeah, there we go. I could disguise myself as one of Jin's eyebrows. Now that's a thought. I'm gonna redeem that as a meme on your channel. Next time I get the joint. Yes. Yes. It's okay. I will willingly be corrupted by the hot dog. Yes, yes. Thank you again, Carriel, for the wait. If you need to sleep and rest, please do. It is a work day, in the middle of a work day. Yes, yes. Appreciate sharing the community. The community. Actually, like, I really gotta pee. I've been drinking a lot. BRB hot dog corruption. Yes, yes. Wait, BRB. Wait, this. Wait, no, no, no. Wait, no. I need to then. Oh. Wait, which room are we at? This first. 何番でしたっけ ?7 番 ?7 番 ?7 番やった気がする。ほほほほ。ほほほほ。Tasty, tasty corruption. Man, I'd like to eat a hot dog right now. Stop by there. Assets, I know, right? Pote hand drew everything, like, holy crap. Like, all this, the animation. Behind you. Don't look back. And all this as well. So good. The animated hallway. Like, I didn't think it was gonna be this extravagant, but here we are. Hello. We're back. We're back, but not back because I might take a break. Not a break. I just need to go pee. BRB really quick. Can I run an ad? No, it's too long. I'm not gonna run it. Be back really fast. Be fast. trying to put his input in like a fan review, and he's actually part of the production. we're all simping over it though because Pote just went crazy over this. Took like a month off streaming just to do it. Work on this. Mad lad. And I reinstalled OBS and plugin. I'm in OBS version 27 with StreamerBot so that I had everything matching. And I think I had the most issues setting it up because I'm stupid. Tadaima desu. But can I just... No, okay, never mind. Mech. Been delaying the update so hard. I downgraded. I also haven't like set anything up lately. Like I forgot to add a mic to like each of the scenes. Yeah. Also being the first person after setup doesn't help. No? Really? I had 2 sessions. I had to book in 2 sessions with Pote to get everything going. Because the first time we tried to import all the StreamerBot integrations, it didn't work. I had to like refresh everything manually. Ah, そういうことね。Yeah, she already knew what to do, so I was the beta tester. But that genuinely scares me how cracked she is at OBS production value even before. I know, right? Have you seen her redeems? Just anybody who doesn't know, put that, please check it out. Ah, I saw welcome, spooky da yo. Spooky da yo. Welcome. We're doing some reading of unsettling mildly spooky stories. Welcome. We're on our last one. Yes. I think I did. No, I think I got everything. Yeah, welcome.
Spoopy-tastic.
Spooky-tastic. Thank you for 10 months. Oh my god. Oh my god. I'm cool. Wait. Okay. Updated spook notifications. Yes. I must be on theme. I must be on brand. On team, on brand. All right, I'm gonna mangle this right from the title. The real horror is how much money we've given. I know, right? Don't sell. Don't sell. No, because it's like too much money is going there. No need. And just watch me. Just watching is free. That is all the support. Jeff in the mirror. Oh my god, we should have like. Somebody should have done that. I wasn't like as creative with the stuff as like, dude. Go watch Fondono's Forgotten Epics VODs, please. The mirror gacha effects are so good. Yes. Please check it out. Baroness. By Edgar Allan Poe. Baroness. Misery is manifold. The wretchedness of earth is multiform. Overreaching the wide horizon as a rainbow, its hues are as various as the hues of that arch, as distinct too, yet as intimately blended. Overreaching the wide horizon as the rainbow, how is it that from beauty I have derived a type of unloveliness, from the covenant of a piece of a simile of sorrow? But as in ethics, evil is a consequence of good, so in fact, out of joy is sorrow born. Either the memory of past bliss is the anguish of today, or the agonies which are there have their origins in the ecstasies which might have been. My baptismal name is Yegus. That of my family I will not mention. Yet there are no towers in the land more time-honored than my gloomy gray hereditary halls. Our line has been called a race of visionaries, and in many striking particulars, in the characters of the family mansion, in the frescoes of the chief saloon, in the tapestries of the dormitories, in the chiseling of some buttresses in the armory, but more especially in the gallery of antique paintings, in the fashion of the library chamber, and lastly, the very peculiar nature of the library's contents, there is more than sufficient evidence to warrant the belief. The recollections of my earliest years are connected with that of the chamber, and its volumes, of which latter I will say no more. Here died my mother. Herein I was born. But it is mere idleness to say that I had not lived before, that the soul had no previous existence. You deny it? Let us not argue the matter. Convince myself I seek not to convince. There is, however, a remembrance of aerial forms, of spiritual and meaning eyes, of sounds musical yet sad, a remembrance which will not be excluded, a memory like a shadow, vague, variable, indefinite, unsteady, and like a shadow, too, in the impossibility of my getting rid of it while the sunlight of my reason shall exist. In that chamber I was born, thus awaking from the long night of what seems, but was not, nonentity, at once into the very regions of fairyland, into a palace of imagination, into the wild dominions of monastic thought and erudition. It is not singular that I gaze around me with a startled and ardent eye, that I loitered away my boyhood in books, and dissipated my youth in reverie. But it is singular that, as years rolled away, the noon of manhood found me still in the mansion of my fathers. It is wonderful what stagnation there fell upon the springs of life. Wonderful how total an inversion took place in the character of my commonest thought. The realities of the world affected me as visions, and as visions only, while the wild ideas of the land of dreams became in turn, not the material of my everyday existence, but in the very deed that existed utterly and solely in itself. Baroness and I were cousins, and we grew up together in my paternal halls. Yet differently we grew. I ill of health, and buried in gloom, she agile, graceful, and overflowing with energy. Hers the ramble on the hillside, mine the studies of the cloister. I living in my own heart, and addicted to body and soul to the most intense and painful meditation. She roaming carelessly through life with no thought of the shadows in her path, with the silent flight of the raven-winged hours. Baroness, I call upon her name. Baroness! And from the grey ruins of the memory 1,000 tremulous recollections are startled at the sound. Ah, vividly is her image before me now, as in the early days of her light-heartedness and joy. Oh, gorgeous yet fantastic beauty! Oh, sylph amid shrubberies of Arnheim! Oh, naiad among its fountains! And then all is mystery is terror, and a tale which should not be told. Disease, a fatal disease, fell like the simoon upon her frame, and even while I gazed upon her, the spirit of change swept over her, pervading her mind, her habits and her character, and in a manner the most subtle and most terrible, disturbing even the identity of her person. Alas, the destroyer came and went, and the victim, where was she? I knew her not, or knew her no longer as Baroness. Among the numerous trains of maladies superinduced by that fatal and primary one, which effected a revolution of so horrible a kind in the moral and physical being of my cousin, may be mentioned as the most distressing and most obstinate in its nature. A species of epilepsy not unfrequently terminating in trance itself. Trance very nearly resembling positive dissolution, and from which her manner of recovery was most instances startlingly abrupt. In the meantime, my own disease, for I have been told that I should call it by no other appellation, my own disease, then, grew rapidly upon me, and assumed finally a monomaniac character of a novel and extraordinary form, hourly and momently gaining vigor, and at length obtaining over me the most incomprehensible ascendancy. This monomania, if I must so term it, consisted in a morbid irritability irritability of those properties of the mind in the metaphysical science termed the attentive. It is more than probable that I am not understood, but I fear indeed that it is in no manner possible to convey to the minds of merely general reader an adequate idea of that nervous intensity of interest in which, in my case, the powers of meditation, not to speak technically, busied and buried themselves in the contemplation of even the most ordinary objects of the universe. To muse for long, unwearied hours with my attention riveted to some frivolous device on the margin, or in the topography of a book, to become absorbed for the better part of a summer day in a quaint shadow falling aslant upon the tapestry, or upon the door, to lose myself an entire night in watching the steady flame of a lamp, the embers of a fire, to dream away whole days over the perfume of a flower, to repeat monotonously some common word until the sound, by dint of frequent repetition, ceased to convey any idea whatever to the mind, to lose all sense of motion or physical existence, by means of absolute bodily quiescence long and obstinately preserved in. Such were few of the most common and least pernicious vagaries induced by a condition of the mental faculties, not indeed altogether unparalleled, but certainly bidding defiance to anything like analysis or explanation. Yet let me not be misapprehended. The undue, earnest, and morbid attention thus excited by objects in their own nature frivolous must not be confounded in character with that ruminating propensity common to all mankind, and more especially indulged in persons of ardent imagination. It was not even, as might be first supposed, an extreme condition of exaggeration of such propensity, but primarily and essentially distinct and different. In the one instance, the dreamer or enthusiast, being interested by an object usually not frivolous, imperceptibly loses sight of this object in the wilderness of deductions and suggestions issuing therefrom, until at the conclusion of a day, dream often replete with luxury, he finds the incitamentum or first cause of his musings entirely vanished and forgotten. In my case, the primary object was invariably frivolous, although assuming, through the medium of my distempered vision, a refracted and unreal importance. Few deductions, if any, were made, and those were pertinaciously returning in upon the original object as centre. The mediations were never pleasurable, and at the termination of the reverie, the first cause, so far from being out of sight, had attained that supernaturally exaggerated interest which was the prevailing feature of the disease. In a word, the powers of mind more particularly exercised were, with me, as I have said before, the attentive, and are, with daydreamer, the speculative. My books, at this epoch, if they did not actually serve to irritate the disorder partook, it will be perceived largely in their imaginative and inconsequential nature of the characteristic quality of the disorder itself. I well remember, among others, the treatises of the noble Italian Collegius Secundus Curio, de Amplitude de Beatrice Legnidel, St. Austin's great work, The City of God, and Tertullian's The Carne Tristi, in which the paradoxical sentence mortis est dil filis credible est quia ineptum est et sepultus resurrexit circum est quia impossible it's occupied my undivided time for many weeks of laborious and fruitless investigation. Thus it will appear that, shaken from its balance only by trivial things, my reason bore a semblance to that ocean crag spoken of by Ptolemy Hepsion, which, steadily resisting the attacks of human violence and the fiercer fury of waters and the wind, tremble only to the touch of the flower called asphodel. And although to caress a thinker, it might appear a matter beyond doubt that the alteration produced by her unhappy malady in the moral conditions of barrenness would afford me many objects for the exercise of that intense and abnormal meditation whose nature I have been at some trouble in explaining, yet such was not in any degree. In the lucid interval of my infirmity, her calamity indeed gave me pain, and taking deeply to heart that total wreck of her fair and gentle life, I did not fail to ponder frequently and bitterly upon the wonder workings means by which so strange a revolution had been so suddenly brought to pass. But these reflections partook not of the idiosyncrasy of my disease, and were such as would have occurred under similar circumstances to the ordinary mass of mankind. True to its own character, my disorder revelled in the less important but more startling changes wrought in the physical frame of Baroness, in the singular and most appalling distortion of her personal identity. During the brightest days of her unparalleled beauty, most surely I had never loved her. In the strange anomaly of my existence, feelings with me had never been of the heart, and my passions always were of the mind. Through the grey of the early morning, among the trellised shadows of the forest at noonday, and in the silence of my library at night, she had flitted by my eyes, and I had seen her, not as the living and breathing Baroness, but as the Baroness of a dream, not as a being of the earthy, but as the abstraction of such a being, not as a thing to admire, but to analyze. Not as an object of love, but as the theme of the most abstruse, although desultory, speculation. And now I shudder in her presence, and grow pale at her approach. Yet, bitterly lamenting her fallen and desolate condition, I called to mind that she had loved me long, and in an evil moment I spoke to her of marriage. And at length the period of our nuptials were approaching, when upon an afternoon in the winter of the year, one of those unseasonably warm, calm, and misty days which are the nurse of the beautiful Halcyon, I sat, as I thought, alone, in the inner apartment of the library. But uplifting my eyes, I saw that Baroness stood before me. Forest drove, during the winter season, give twice 7 days of warmth. Men have called this clement and temperate time the nurse of the beautiful Halcyon. Simonides. Was it my own excited imagination, or the misty influence of the atmosphere, or that uncertain twilight of the chamber, or the great draperies which fell around her figure, that caused in it so vacillating and indistinct an outline? I could not tell. She spoke no word. Not for words could I uttered a syllable. An icy chill ran through my frame, a sense of insufferable anxiety oppressed me, a consuming curiosity pervaded my soul. And sinking back upon the chair, I remained for some time breathless and motionless, with my eyes riveted upon her person. Alas, its emaciation was excessive, and not one vestige of the former being lurked in any single of the contour. My burning glances at length fell upon the face. The forehead was high and very pale and singularly placid. The once jetty hair fell partially over it and overshadowed the hollow temples with innumerable ringlets, now of a vivid yellow, and jarring discordantly in their fantastic character with reaming melancholy of the countenance. The eyes were lifeless and lustreless, seemingly pupilless, and I shrank involuntarily from their glassy stare to the contemplation of thin and shrunken lips. They parted, and in a smile of a peculiar meaning, the teeth of the changed Baroness disclosed themselves slowly to my view. Would to God that I had never beheld them, or that having done so, had I died. The shutting of a door disturbed me, and looking up, I found that my cousin had departed from the chamber. But from the disordered chamber of my brain had not, alas, departed, and would not be driven away, the white and ghastly spectrum of the teeth. Not a speck on their surface, not a shade on their enamel, not an indenture on their edges, but what that period of her smile had sufficed to brandon upon my memory. I saw them now even more unequivocally than I beheld them. The teeth! They were there, everywhere, and visibly and palpably before me, long, narrow, and excessively white, with the pale lips writhing about them, as in the very moment of their first and terrible development. Then came the full fury of my monomania, and I struggled in vain against its strange and irresistible influence. In the multiplied objects of the external world, I had no thoughts but for the teeth. For these I longed with a frenzied desire. All other matters and all different interests became absorbed in their single contemplation. They alone were present to the mental eye, and they, in their sole individuality, became the essence of my mental life. I held them up in every light, turned them up in every attitude. I surveyed their characteristics, I dwelt upon their peculiarities, I pondered upon their conformation. I mused upon the alteration in their nature. I shuddered as I assigned them to an imagination, a sensitive and sentient power, and even when unassisted by the lips, a capability of moral expression. Of Mademoiselle Salle, it had been well said, que tout ce pas étient de sentiments, and of Baroness I more seriously believed que tout ce dent étient des idées. Ah, here was the idiotic thought that destroyed me. Deities. Therefore it was that I coveted them so madly. I felt that their passion could alone ever restore me to peace in giving me back to reason. And the evening closed in upon me, and then the darkness came and tarried and went, and the day again dawned. And the mist of a second night were now gathering around, and still I sat motionless in that solitary room, and still I sat buried in meditation, and still the phantasma of the teeth maintained its terrible ascendancy. As with the most vivid and hideous distinctness it floated about amid the changing lights and shadows of the chamber. At length there broke in upon my dreams a cry as of horror and dismay, and thereunto, after a pause, succeeded the sound of my troubled voices, intermingled with many low moanings of sorrow or of pain. I arose from my seat, and throwing open one of the doors of the library, saw standing out in the antechamber with a servant maiden, all in tears, who told me that Baroness was no more. She had been seized with epilepsy in the early morning, and now, at the closing of the night, the grave was ready for its tenant, and all the preparations for the burial were completed. I found myself sitting in the library, and again sitting there alone. It seemed that I had newly awakened from a confused and exciting dream. I knew that it was now midnight, and I was well aware that since the setting of the sun, Baroness had been interred. But of that dreary period which I intervened I had no positive, at least no definite comprehension. Yet its memory was replete with horror more horrible from being vague, and terror more terrible from ambiguity. It was a fearful page in the record of my existence, written all over with dim and hideous and unintelligible recollections. I strived to decipher them, but in vain. While ever and anon, like the spirit of a departed sound, the shrill and piercing shriek of a female voice seemed to be ringing in my ears. I had done a deed. What was it? I asked myself the question aloud, and the whispering echoes of the chamber answered me. What was it? On the table beside me burned a lamp, and in it lay a little box. It was of no remarkable character, and I had seen it frequently before. For it was the property of the family physician, but how came it here, upon my table, and why did I shudder in regarding it? These things were in no manner to be accounted for, and my eyes at length dropped to the open pages of a book, and to a sentence underscored therein. The words were the singular but simple ones of the poet M. Zait. Disbant mihi sodalis si sepulchrum amice vistarem, cruelas mea aliquantim for levitas. Why, then, as I perused them, did the hairs on my head erect themselves on end, and the blood of my body become congealed within my veins? There came a light tap at the library door, and pale as the tenant of a tomb, a menial entered upon tiptoe. His looks were wild with terror, and he spoke to me in a voice of tremulous, husky, and very low. What said he? Some broken sentence I heard. He told of a wild cry disturbing the silence of the night, of the gathering together of the household, of a search in the direction of the sound, and then his tones grew thrillingly distinct as he whispered me of a violated grave, of a disfigured body enshrouded, yet still breathing, still palpitating, still alive. He pointed to garments. They were muddy and clotted with gore. I spoke not, and he took me gently by the hand. It was indented with the impress of human nails. He directed my attention to some object against the wall. I looked at it for some minutes. It was a spade. With a shriek, I bounded to the table and grasped the box that lay upon it. But I could not force it open, and in my tremor it slipped from my hands and fell heavily and burst into pieces. And from it, with a rattling sound, there rolled out some instruments of dental surgery, intermingled with 32 small, white and ivory-looking substances that were scattered to and fro about the floor. Nanny! What? Just a moment. What? Okay, so we have a man. We have a man. And then we have his cousin. His cousin is very nice, very pretty. And then she took ill. And then they were going to marry. And then he's suddenly obsessed with her teeth. And then there's a lot of languages that I do not understand. Took her teeth out and buried her alive. Bruh. Are you okay? It's her. Wait, but didn't she pass in the morning due to like something? Died and then dug out her corpse and then took her teeth out? But she's still alive? Nanny. Or did she dig herself out? Nanny. That was fairness. They thought so, but the dude said that she was alive when they found her in the disturbed grave. Did she take one of those like potions in Romeo and Juliet where like you appear dead but you're not actually dead? But then the man went to take her teeth out because he was obsessed with her teeth. That was like a very vivid description of her teeth. Jesus. Jesus. It's a very disturbing one to end on. Very appropriate, I think. Damn. I feel like that could lead to like some sort of a serial killing thing if there isn't some mad lad, hopefully behind bars or already dead. This is the worst ad for Crest whitening strips. Please. Please. It's our last one. 3.5 hours, okay. Did I miss any? Come on. Let's see. Oh. This one. Basically, man's just like really likes teeth. Last candle. We don't. Leave it on. Because we blow out the last candle, it's gonna be completely pitch black. There we go. We had 7 stories? Yes. So that is my part for that. Hyakumonogatari Kaidankai. Was there something in the dark? What? No? Nah. I don't think so. Did you see something behind you? Is it behind you? Hmm? Hmm? Not there, you don't acknowledge it? Yeah, you pretend you do not see. Behind you. Spooky story. I still got spooky stories? You do play a lot of horror, don't you? Refuse to look behind, must resist curiosity. And there's nothing behind. See? We're all good. We're all good. Yeah. Anybody doing anything spoopy? Want some spoopy? It's not picking up the TV. Like I keep pausing because like I'm wondering if it's picking up radio signals or television signals. Yeah. Calio stream again, please. Achoo! What's your toe? You went for like 5 hours, didn't you? Yabe. Are you doing some makers crafting? Makers and crastings, yes. Next is doing Little Nightmares. Little Nightmares is scary, yeah? What's this? I feel like I mostly see spooky stuff when I'm super tired. You see spooky stuff? Oh. I would like to not see spooky stuff. Oh, this is not scary. We've got quite a crowd. Is anybody doing readings as well? Let me stalk some people. One moment. Yes, thank you, Woobot. On the stream, all the animations, the little details, the setting is all done by Pote. Please check her out. Didi. One of the indie game devs bought an EMF reader like in Phasmo and they let me use it for a bit. It seemed to really like people's phones. Oh my gosh. The first image that came to mind was like that the group of Phasmophobia cosplayers. That was like on Twitter a while ago. That was great. The lady mentioned that earlier in the day it had gone to the highest level when someone put their phone next to it, so I did it with mine and I did too. Our phones are powered by souls. You can't just reveal that to people. Why are you like this? It's a secret. It's a government, top secret government secret, okay? They're harvesting our souls so they can power our smartphones. My gosh. Hey! Can't believe this. Shaking my head. You want some Silent Hill? Or... Is Silent Hill like jump scares? I have to wave it around a little bit and it was a level 3 around someone. Or... Boo. Getting streamed is so weird. Not really jump scares like the old Resident Evil games that are just super creepy and hard to navigate. Ah, I see. Outlast, are you gonna play Outlast? Are you gonna play Outlast now? Yes? That's just on spaghetti. Wait, who do I have? Do I have anybody on my raid list? Is anybody on? Like the people I want to raid, like never stream. And in like a time where I can read them. Or actually follow them for that matter. Change their name. Oh, what's their new name? Crap. Oh no. Night. Why did I wipe my history? We reading Iron Mouse? Let's go. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, we'll try Silent Hill. Silent Hill. They have a very nice model. Rito? Did I spell right? Okay. Yay! Why am I the last batter? I have no idea what to do with it. I feel like I should end with something. Put this stream again. So strange. I don't know how to end this. How do I end? Do I go back into the room and I blow the last candle out? Is that what I do now? You're the story. Thank you for coming by. Read. Hi. Are they blocked? Do we have anything blocked? No blocks? Okay. Cool. Thank you for the pet. Thank you everybody for sticking around to me mumbling and jumping over words. Thank you Rabbit so much for all the selections. Apologies that I can't read that I'm illiterate partially. And thank you for the 2 stories that you wrote for this as well. Holy crap, everybody. Again, check out AntiRabbit, please. Thank you. Right now. And these were the stories that I read. And what else? And Pote as well for hosting the Hyakumonogatari Kaidankai. Mata kite ne. If you would like to listen to more, you missed the rest, please go check out all these lovely, amazing people, streamers. They also did a bunch of story readings as well. So please check it out. Yeah, and I will be back for something. I don't know. Stream next time, maybe. I have no idea. Ba. Thank you for the ba. Thank you, Blue Jay. Everyone's so quiet. I know, right? I know. Oh wait, I need to go watch Mr. Annie's story as well because I had a meeting call and then I missed it. Okay, bye. I forgot to raid.